Chapter 47:17 was reluctant to punish the servants at this time. Yun Shujo was holding a large kitchen knife and chatting with the 4 maids. What are your names? Who is the master behind you? Remember to tell the truth, or I will cut off her head and kick it like a ball. One of the rough maids said with some disdain, Miss Cousin, you are new here. I advise you to keep a low profile. Even if we tell you the master behind you, can you afford to provoke him? Yun Shujo curled her lips and walked to the maid with the kitchen knife in her hand. Then, she raised the knife and turned the maid into a dead body. The other 3 maids cried out in fear. Although the people of the Lan family were scheming, they were all used to some tricks. It was the first time they had seen such a blatant murder. Shut up, or I'll kill all of you. Yun Shujo rubbed the blood on the kitchen knife on the clothes of the maid and said fiercely. The 3 servant girls didn't dare to make a sound. They all trembled as if they were sifting chaff. Yun Shujo slowly sat back on her seat. Then, she pointed the kitchen knife at one of the servant girls and said, Are you going to tell me or not? Yes, miss, I'll tell you. I know, Lu Luo. The first madam's man. Yun Shujo looked at another servant girl. The servant girl trembled and quickly said, Miss, I'm Hong Ling, also the first madam's man. Yun Shujo's eyes flashed. This Hong Ling could still be so organized at this time. She was indeed a talent. She then looked at the rough servant girl. The servant girl was obviously frightened. After trembling for a long time, she said, This servant, Kai Yun, is the second madam's servant. Yun Shujo nodded and put away the big kitchen knife. Hong Ling and the other 2 finally let out a sigh of relief. However, they saw Yun Shujo take out another dagger. Yun Shujo raised her hand, and the dagger grazed Hong Ling's cheek and shot onto the dead maid's body. Hong Ling was so frightened that her face turned pale. She knew that this was a warning to her, so she immediately put away her remaining thoughts. I don't care who you originally belonged to. Since you've entered my courtyard, you're mine. If your family members are being blackmailed by the first madam or second madam, feel free to tell me. I naturally have a way to save their lives. However, there's one thing. If I find out that you've betrayed me, it won't be as simple as killing you. I guarantee that your family won't have a single living thing. Do you understand? The 3 maids couldn't help but kowtow, expressing that they didn't dare to betray Yun. After Yun Shujo understood the situation, she said with a smile, All of you, get up. You will know in the future. I am the most kind-hearted person. I have never been willing to punish the servants. Hong Ling and the other 2 thought, Yes, you're unwilling to punish the servants. You're just going to chop off their heads. They originally thought that this cousin lady was helpless and weak to be bullied. Now, it looked like she was a devil who killed without batting an eye. However, the Blue Mansion's waters were unusually deep. With her sharp edge exposed, she probably wouldn't be able to go far. Chapter 47:18 Miss Biao sent you something again. Just as Hong Ling and the other 2 were thinking about it, they heard Yun Shujo say, Who sent those 2 pots of flowers? Hong Ling quickly said, Miss, one of those 2 pots of flowers was sent by Miss Luo Shan, and the other one was sent by Miss Luo Fang. Yun Shujo glanced at Hong Ling. She was quite tactful and directly addressed her as Miss. Did this mean that she would sincerely treat her as her master from now on? The 2 pots of flowers were given by 2 people. She would naturally not believe that it was unintentional. However, was one of the 2 people harboring evil intentions, or were they birds of a feather? Her eyes flashed and she said, Throw the corpse at the entrance of my great-uncle's courtyard and say that you want to give it to him as fertilizer. After all, with fertilizer, the flowers can bloom more brightly. Hong Ling and the other 2 almost fell to the ground in fright. What the hell? Throw the corpse at the entrance of the 3rd elder's courtyard. Was she complaining that they didn't die fast enough? Yun Shujo didn't continue speaking, but looked at them with a faint smile. Hong Ling gritted her teeth. She knew that Yun Shujo was testing them. If they didn't do it, they might not be able to keep their lives. Thus, she put the corpse into her storage ring and said respectfully, "Yes, your servant will do it right away." Lu Luo and Kai Yun quickly nodded in agreement. Yun Shujo looked at Hong Ling meaningfully, then wrote a note and handed it to Hong Ling. "After you throw the corpse on the ground, pass this note to Zhu Yang, and then run back immediately. Otherwise, my great-uncle will vent his anger and kill all of you. Sigh, there aren't many masters like me who are considerate of their subordinates. You don't have to be too grateful to me." Hong Ling and the other two were speechless. She was considerate of her subordinates? It was more like she wanted them to die. Soft-hearted and kind-hearted? There was no such thing. This was a devil who ate people without spitting out their bones. Hong Ling and the other two could only shiver as they arrived near Lan Dimeo's courtyard. Lu Luo asked in a trembling voice, "Hong Ling, are we really going to do that? If Third Elder finds out, he definitely won't spare us." Hong Ling laughed bitterly. "If Third Elder finds out, he won't spare us. But if we don't do it, Miss Zhu will kill us directly." The three of them thought about it and agreed. They were really unlucky. How did they end up with such a master? Finally, Hong Ling gritted her teeth and walked a few steps to the entrance of the courtyard. Zhu Yang was stunned when he saw Hong Ling and the other two. Could it be that Miss Cousin had come to deliver a note again? Just as he was thinking about it, he saw Hong Ling throw out a body with its body and head separated. Then, she stuffed him with a note and ran away. Zhu Yang and the other guards were dumbfounded. What did this mean? Zhu Yang looked at the note in his hand and naturally did not dare to open it. He hurriedly ran into Lan Dimeo's study. Lan Dimeo was extremely busy. He had not returned in the past few days, so he had a lot of things to do. "Third Elder, my cousin's maid gave you something." Zhu Yang stuttered. Lan Dimeo frowned. "What did she give you again?" He pursed his lips in his heart. This little girl must be trying to please him. She was too eager to get close to him. Did she think that giving him something would please him? He didn't even care about the things she gave him. Even if he did, the rules of the Lan family were there. He wouldn't help her. Moreover, she wasn't a proper descendant of the Lan family. His goal was only the jade token. He wasn't interested in anything else. Zhu Yang took a deep breath and said, "Miss, this time, I sent you a corpse." Chapter 47:19, Capture that evil creature for me. Lan Dimeo thought he heard wrong and asked again, "What did you say she sent me?" Zhu Yang braced himself and said, "Miss Cousin, I sent you a corpse." Lan Dimeo smacked the desk angrily. What did this little trash want to do? It was fine if he sent flowers before, but what did he mean by sending a corpse now? Wait. A corpse? Whose corpse is that? When I went to send flowers to Miss Biao, I saw 4 maids in her courtyard. That corpse should be a rough maid. Third Elder, could it be that someone else killed that maid and Miss Biao wants you to uphold justice for her? Zhu Yang said. In Zhu Yang's opinion, Miss Biao had a gentle personality and wouldn't do anything to kill her maid. Maybe one of the masters bullied her, so they killed her maid. Lan Dimeo nodded slightly when he heard this. He felt that what he said made sense. That little trash probably wanted him to help make a decision. He was really naive. Lan Dimeo waved his hand when he thought of this and said casually, "Go and dispose of that corpse. This matter ends here." Zhu Yang also felt that the Third Elder would not interfere in the battle below. He nodded and was about to take his leave when he remembered the note in his hand. He quickly said, "Third Elder, the young Miss Maid also gave me a note." Zhu Yang handed the note in his hand to the Third Elder. A cold smile appeared on the Third Elder's face. That little trash wouldn't think that he would help her just because she put in a few good words, right? What a fool. Even though he thought so, the third elder still opened the note. On the note, there was still a familiar crooked handwriting. Great uncle, this maid was disobedient, so I killed her to make fertilizer for you. As the saying goes, a maid is not heartless. Turning into spring mud is more protective of flowers. Third elder could not believe his eyes. What the hell? That maid was killed by that little piece of trash. He killed a maid on the first day he came? So what if he killed her, but she actually sent her to him? Was this a demonstration? Flower fertilizer? And the maid was not a heartless thing. Turning into spring mud was more protective of flowers? He was so angry. Zhu Yang saw third elder's furious look and thought, it seems that third elder said that he did not care about cousin Miss life and death, but in fact, he was still concerned. Otherwise, why would he be so angry when he saw someone bullying cousin Miss? Just as he was thinking, he heard the third elder slam the table and shout angrily, "Bring that evil creature here. I must ask for the family law today." Zhu Yang quickly asked, "Third elder, who do you want me to bring here?" Zhu Yang was even more confused now. What? That maid was killed by his cousin? How was that possible? Was there some misunderstanding? How could his cousin kill someone when she was new here? Although Zhu Yang did not believe that Yun Chuzhou would kill someone, he still rushed to Yun Chuzhi's courtyard. "Cousin, third elder wants you to go over." Yun Chuzhou did not say much and brought Hong Ling out of the courtyard. Zhu Yang could not help but ask, "Miss, did you really kill that maid?" Yun Chuzhou sighed faintly. "I didn't want to kill her either, but who asked her to be disobedient?" Fortunately, the remaining three were still obedient. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do it. After all, I'm kind and soft-hearted. Chapter 47. Sharp-tongued Zhu Yang staggered and almost fell to the ground. The image of the gentle-tempered young lady in his mind suddenly collapsed. How was she a gentle and harmless little sheep? She was clearly a wolf in sheep's clothing. She was also kind and soft-hearted. It would be a ghost if he believed her. He shook his head secretly. He was too naive. This person also had the blood of the Lan family. The people of the Lan family were all ruthless. Naturally, this young cousin would not be an exception. However, she had caused such a ruckus when she first arrived. It was obvious that she was reckless. She would suffer a great loss sooner or later. She might even lose her life in a few days. Not to mention that this matter would not end well. Third elder was furious. He might not even punish her. Soon, the three of them arrived at third elder's courtyard. Yun Chuzhou asked Hong Ling to wait outside while she and Zhu Yang entered Lan Dimeo's study room. As soon as they entered the study room, Yun Chuzhou sobbed, "Great uncle, I knew that you wouldn't ignore my life and death. You have to make a decision for me." Zhu Yang was dumbfounded. Just a moment ago, this Miss Cousin was still smiling brightly. Why was she crying so miserably now? The speed at which she changed her face was really fast. Lan Dimeo was also a little confused by He Xinjia's crying. He snorted coldly, "You killed your maid for no reason and even sent her body to me to demonstrate your power. How can you still have the face to cry?" "Great uncle, I had no choice. I didn't want to do this." "Who asked her to insult you?" "I accidentally killed her in a moment of anger," Yun Chuzhou said while crying. Lan Dimeo was stunned. "Insult me? What did she scold me for?" "She called me a little bastard, and you are my great uncle." "If I were a little bastard, wouldn't you be an old bastard?" Yun Chuzhou said angrily. Lan Dimeo slammed the desk angrily. "How dare you!" He Xinjiu shrunk her neck. "Great uncle, I didn't say that. It was all said by that maid. Don't you think she deserved to die?" Lan Dimeo was not stupid, so he knew that Yun Chuzhou was trying to argue with him. He was so angry that he sniffed and said, "You have a sharp tongue. What should you do?" Yun Chuzhou sniffled and said, "Forget it. I'm just a poor little girl who no one wants. If you want to punish me, just punish me. It's best if you just kill me, so that I can be reunited with my grandmother. Lan Dimeo was so angry that he wanted to strangle Hei Shinjo to death when he saw her crying. However, when he heard her mention Lan Shishan and the jade token, he had to suppress the anger in his heart and said, "Don't cry. It won't happen again. If you make trouble again, I'll have to punish you." Hei Xinjia's tears turned into a smile. "Great uncle, I knew that you loved me the most and wouldn't punish me. Please don't worry, I'll leave first." After saying that, he ran away like a wisp of smoke. Zhu Yang was dumbfounded. He ran away just like that? He just cried after causing such a big trouble? Lan Dimeo felt a headache. He used the lives of the Yi family members to force Yi Yuanliang to leave. Yi Yuanliang said that most of the things left behind by the Lan family had been taken away by Yi Lan, and only one box was given to Yun Shujiu. Yi Yuanliang had said that he was afraid of missing the person when he saw the object, so he had only taken a glance at it and had never opened the box again. As for whether there was a jade tablet inside, he was not sure. Did that little trash know where the jade tablet was? Chapter 47-21 Ancestral Residence. It was not that Lan Dimeo had not thought of using methods to force Yun Shujiu, but he was afraid that the jade tablet was in Yi Lan's hands. If Yi Lan could escape in the future, he could force Yi Lan to hand over the jade tablet if he had this little piece of trash in his hands. Therefore, he would not kill Yun Shujiu for the time being. Yun Shujiu swaggered towards her own courtyard with Hong Ling. Hong Ling gritted her teeth and decided to follow Yun Shujiu in the future when she saw that Yun Shujiu did not receive any punishment despite being so evil. The masters of the Lan family's 3 branches soon found out about Yun Shujiu's actions. Of course, they did not know the inside story, but they knew about Yun Shujiu sending flowers and killing the maid. Everyone had different thoughts, but most of them felt that Yun Shujiu was a foolhardy fool who would not be able to survive for more than a few days. However, they didn't make any moves and planned to wait and see. Therefore, for the next 2 days, Yun Shujiu's days were relatively peaceful. She used these 2 days to learn a lot about the Lan family and the Chongshao continent from the 3 maids. Only then did Yun Shujiu know that apart from the eldest, second, and third branches of the Lan family, there was also an ancestral home where the current head of the Lan family, Lan Dimeo's grandfather, lived. It was said that the father of the 3 branches of the Lan family had all died in some great battle, but the head of the Lan family was still alive and kicking until now. However, no one in Lan Dimeo's generation and his son's generation had been chosen by the head of the Lan family, so the current candidate for the young head of the Lan family had to be selected among the young people of Lan Luchen's generation. This old ancestor of the Lan family had rarely shown his face, but no one dared to disobey him in the slightest because not only was this old ancestor's strength unfathomable, even the people who served him were all experts. The Lan family's ancestral residence had a library and a training ground. Anyone from the Lan family could enter. However, one could enter, but there were different levels. Different levels had different levels of authority. Not to mention a junior like Lan Luochen, even Lan Dimeo could not enter places beyond his level. As for the level, the Lan family had a set of calculation methods. It was nothing more than the results of the competition, contributions to the Lan family, and so on. Even if one had an additional child, they would be rewarded with a certain amount of points. This time, Lan Dimeo brought Hei Shinjo back, and he would be rewarded with corresponding points. Yun Shujiu squinted her eyes as she listened. This Lan family was managed like a sect, but this also had benefits. It could prevent the younger generation from enjoying themselves, and encourage them to continuously become stronger. Yun Shujiu decided to go for a stroll in the ancestral residence. Although she did not have any family points now, she could still enter the first level of the library and the lowest level of the cultivation room. Of course, she was not interested in the cultivation room, but the library was very important to her now. Yun Shujiu did as she was told. After breakfast that day, she led Hong Ling out of the 3 rooms. After 2 days of observation, Yun Shujiu realized that Hong Ling was bolder and more meticulous than Lu Luo. It seemed that she was planning to follow her and take her out for an inspection. Many people were staring at her. As soon as she left the 3 rooms, the news immediately spread to the masters everywhere. However, everyone thought that Yun Shujiu had gone out for a stroll. After all, this country bumpkin had just arrived and naturally wanted to see the world. They did not expect Yun Shujiu to go to the ancestral residence. Chapter 47-22, Lan Luoshan Yun Shujiu brought Hong Ling to the Lan family's ancestral home. The Lan family's ancestral home was not as magnificent as the 3 houses of the Lan family. The main door was a little mottled and there were no guards at the door. If it were not for the words Lan Mansion written on the plaque, Yun Shujiu would have thought that Hong Ling had led the wrong way. Before entering, Hong Ling hesitated for a moment before saying, "Miss, you must remember that you must not offend anyone inside, not even the maids." She was really afraid that this ancestor would act like a demon without caring about anything inside. If that happened, none of them would be able to live. Yun Shujiu nodded. "Don't worry, I never cause trouble. Hong Ling, there would be a ghost if she believed you." Hong Ling went forward and knocked on the door knocker. The door was opened from the inside and a guard came out. He sized up Yun Shujiu and Hong Ling. "What do you want?" Hong Ling quickly said, "Big brother guard, this is our 3rd cousin. She wants to go to the library of the ancestral residence to read." Hong Ling said as she took the identity document from Yun Shujiu and handed it to the guard. This identity document was only given to her by Zhu Yang the day before by Lan Dimeo. This guy thought to himself, this Lan family's ancestral residence is really strict in its examination. The guard looked at Yun Shujiu in surprise. This young cousin of the 3rd branch had just arrived and she had already come to the ancestral residence to read? Perhaps the drunkard's intention was not in the bar. The young masters of the Lan family would come to the ancestral residence to cultivate or read. This young cousin of hers was quite good-looking. She must have had the intention to seduce people, right? When the guard thought of this, his eyes could not help but flash with disdain. However, he did not say anything and returned the identity document to Yun Shujiu, allowing the 2 of them to enter the ancestral residence. Yun Shujiu looked at the interior of the ancestral residence and could not help but sigh in her heart. This was the true heritage of an aristocratic family. It was much better than the aesthetics of the 3 sons of the Lan family, who were nouveau riche. Hong Ling had never been to the ancestral home before, so both she and Yun Shujiu were at a loss. They did not know where to go for a moment. Hong Ling wanted to ask the guard just now, but she saw that the guard had entered the room next to the door. Apparently, he did not intend to pay attention to the 2 of them. Yun Shujiu saw Hong Ling's embarrassment and guessed that she had not been here before. She smiled and said, "Well, look for it ourselves. Treat it as a visit." In fact, after 2 days of contact, Hong Ling felt that this master was not bad. Chapter 47-23, Xiang Yuan. Although Yun Shujiu was cursing in her heart, she said with a smile on her face, "Sister Luo Yan is right. I really shouldn't have come here to embarrass myself." Lan Luo Yan was a little stunned when she heard Yun Shujiu's words. She curled her lips and said, "At least you know your place. Sister Luoshan, we still have to go to the silk shop. Don't waste time with this trash. Let's go quickly." Lan Luoshan smiled apologetically at Yun Shujiu and then left with a few women. She could vaguely hear the mocking voices of the few women towards Yun Shujiu. They were saying that Yun Shujiu's spiritual power was low and that she was from a lower-tier continent and could not be put on the stage. Hong Ling stood nervously at the side. To be honest, she was really afraid that this ancestor would not care about anything and cause a ruckus in the ancestral house. If that happened, neither of them would survive. Fortunately, Yun Shujiu acted as if she did not hear it. She smiled and said, "Sister Luo Yan and Sister Luo Shan are very close? Didn't they say that they are competitors?" Hong Ling lowered her voice and said, although the young masters of the Lan family have conflicts of interest, they are also on good terms with each other in private. Miss Luo Shan is gentle and generous. Many young masters and young ladies in the three branches are on good terms with her. Yun Shujiao had an epiphany. So it turned out that she was a white lotus with a long sleeves and a graceful dance. It made sense. Her mother, Zhuang Shi, was an old white lotus. Naturally, she had received the true inheritance. As the two of them were talking, they heard a woman shout sharply, "How dare you? You, a servant, dare to speak indiscriminately about your master. What crime should you commit?" Hong Ling's face immediately turned pale when she saw the person who spoke. She knelt on the ground and said, "Sister Xiang Yuan, I've realized my mistake. Please spare me." The woman snorted coldly. "You've already made a mistake. How can you just admit your mistake and get away with it? Slap yourself until I say to stop." Hong Ling bit her lips tightly and reached out to slap herself. However, her hand was grabbed by a pair of warm hands. She looked up and saw that Yun Shujiao was holding her right hand. Yun Shujiao released Hong Ling's hand and looked at the woman who spoke. The woman's appearance could only be considered delicate and pretty. The clothes she wore looked similar to Hong Ling's, but the color was slightly different. There were two other women standing behind the woman. The clothes they wore were the same as Hong Ling's. It was likely that this woman's status was higher than Hong Ling's. "Who are you? Why are you punishing my maid?" Yun Shujiao asked indifferently. The woman said arrogantly, "I'm the first-class maid in charge of the cultivation room in the ancestral residence. Your maid criticized the master in the ancestral residence. Naturally, she should be punished." Xiang Yuan couldn't help but become angry from embarrassment. You're twisting the facts." Although she said so at the end, she said earlier that the young masters have a conflict of interest. Isn't that criticizing the master? Yun Shujiao spread her hands. "I think what she said is right. Don't tell me that brothers and sisters don't have a conflict of interest. The Lan family has always encouraged each other to display their abilities, so what? You're just a little maid, yet you still want to change the old ancestors' intentions? If you want to be slapped, you should be slapped too." Xiang Yuan's face flushed red. In this ancestral residence, no one has been so arrogant. Take her down and send her to the punishment hall. Hong Ling's face turned even paler when she heard Xiang Yuan's words. She slapped herself hard. "Sister Xiang Yuan, my family's young miss is new here and doesn't know anything. All the mistakes are my fault. Please spare us." Xiang Yuan snorted coldly. "It's not impossible to spare you. My brother has taken a fancy to you. Go and accompany him for one night and forget about today's matter. Otherwise, they'll send you to the punishment hall." Chapter 47-24 was about to kick you. Hong Ling heard Xiang Yuan's words and her body trembled. She bit her lips tightly. She understood that Xiang Yuan was clearly looking for trouble on purpose. She wanted to give her to her brother to play with. Xiang Yuan's brother, Shi Lu, was also working in the third ward. He was a small steward who was in charge of the stable. His reputation was not ordinary. If it was not for Xiang Yuan's protection, he would have been kicked out of the third ward long ago. Shi Lu had once expressed his goodwill to Hong Ling, but Hong Ling did not take a fancy to him and flatly rejected him. Although Shi Lu was unwilling, Hong Ling was the first lattice maid. He did not have the heart or the guts to be a thief, so he did not dare to pester her anymore. Xiang Yuan had heard Shi Lu mention Hong Ling's matter earlier. Moreover, her appearance was average, so she was even more jealous of Hong Ling's outstanding appearance. If the young masters of the Lan family did not follow the rules in the ancestral residence, they would have to enter the punishment hall to be punished. As a first-class maid, she had the right to report them. Therefore, the young masters of the Lan family would not easily offend her. She also did not take Yun Shujiao, this cousin who suddenly appeared, seriously. "Sister Xiang Yuan, I beg you." Hong Ling wanted to continue begging Xiang Yuan, but she heard Yun Chujia's cold voice, "Hong Ling, your master is me, not this dog slave. Stand up." Hong Ling wanted to persuade Yun Chuzhou, but when she saw her cold expression, she did not dare to say it out loud. On second thought, even if she was going to die, she was not willing to send herself to be ruined by that stone road. She gritted her teeth and stood up. Xiang Yuan saw this and shouted sharply, "Hong Ling, how dare you? I did not ask you to get up, but you actually dared to get up." Yun Chuzhou did not even look at Xiang Yuan and said to Hong Ling, "Let's go to the library. Don't waste time here." Xiang Yuan would not let Yun Chuzhou and her servant leave like this. She shouted, "Stop! You have violated the rules of the ancestral residence. Follow me to the punishment hall to receive your punishment." Hong Ling's entire body trembled. The hall of punishment of the ancestral residence was not a joke. The people inside did not care who was being punished. Young Master Luo Han of the third chamber had offended a guest in the cultivation room. After receiving the punishment from the hall of punishment, he had to lie on the bed for 3 months before he could get down. However, she saw that Yun Chuzhou did not have any intention of stopping. She only had to bite the bullet and follow her. Xiang Yuan saw that Yun Chuzhou and Hong Ling were actually continuing to walk on their own, so she jumped in front of Yun Chuzhou and blocked their way. "Didn't you hear what I said? Hurry up and follow me to the punishment hall." Yun Chuzhou said indifferently, "Move aside." Xiang Yuan sneered, "Miss, is your brain not working? You want me to move aside? If you don't know what's good for you, I can only let someone take you to the punishment hall." "Miss, it seems that you are planning to refuse a toast." Xiang Yuan's words stopped abruptly because Yun Chuzhou kicked her lower abdomen. Xiang Yuan flew out like a kite with a broken string and fell heavily to the ground. Hong Ling was scared silly. There was only one thought in her mind. It was over, she was dead for sure. This ancestor actually dared to hit the first-class maid of the ancestral residence. She was tired of living. The 2 maids brought by Xiang Yuan were also dumbfounded. Not to mention Yun Chuzhou, who had an awkward status. Even the proper master of the Lan family was polite to the servants of the ancestral residence. This person actually dared to hit people? Was he ignorant and fearless, or was he tired of living? Chapter 47:25 was beaten into a pig's head. Although Xiang Yuan was not injured, she had never suffered such humiliation before. She jumped up from the ground and pounced on Yun Chuzhou. "Bitch, how dare you hit me? You're courting death." Hong Ling subconsciously blocked in front of Yun Chuzhou, but was pulled aside by Yun Chuzhou. She was stunned for a moment. After Yun Chuzhou pushed Hong Ling to the side, she got into a fight with Xiang Yuan. After 2 days of understanding, Yun Chuzhou had learned that although the spiritual power of people in the Chongshao continent was generally higher than that of people in the towering Sky continent, it was not much higher. For example, the spiritual power of Hong Ling's maids was almost the same as Yun Chujia's, around the 6th level of spiritual nirvana, while the spiritual power of Lan Luoshan and the others was around the 3rd level of extreme spirit realm. As for Xiang Yuan, although Yun Chuzhou did not know her spiritual power level, it was estimated that she was only at the 8th or 9th level of the nirvana stage. Although she was 2 or 3 levels higher than her, the difference in spiritual power was not a problem for her. If she did not have some scruples and could not use her full strength, even Lan Luoshan would not be her match. The fight over here quickly attracted the attention of many people. After all, the ancestral residence had always been very quiet. Who would dare to behave atrociously here? Seeing more and more people coming over, Xiang Yuan was proud of herself, but at the same time, she was a little annoyed. She had thought that she could easily defeat this country bumpkin, but she was forced by this country bumpkin to the point that she had no strength to fight back. What the hell? While Xiang Yuan was distracted, Yun Chujia's figure flashed behind her and grabbed her neck with her right hand. "Don't move, or I'll kill you." Xiang Yuan never thought that she would be defeated by a good-for-nothing in the 6th layer of the nirvana stage. She shouted angrily, "How dare you? If you dare to kill me, you won't live either. Yun Shujiu sneered and looked at Hong Ling, who was dumbfounded. Xiang Yuan has offended her superior. Come and slap me. When I say stop, then stop. Hong Ling's mouth was wide open. She thought there was something wrong with her ears and wanted her to slap Xiang Yuan. Yun Shujiu saw that she did not move and said with a cold face, "What? Do you want to disobey me?" Hong Ling shivered and gritted her teeth. Anyway, Xiang Yuan had her eyes on her. Rather than being abused by her brother, she might as well vent her anger. Even if she died, she would be happy. Thinking of this, Hong Ling walked in front of Xiang Yuan and raised her right hand to give Xiang Yuan a hard slap. Xiang Yuan was stunned by the slap and stared at Hong Ling in disbelief. You dare to hit me?" In response, Hong Ling gave her another slap. When the other servants of the ancestral residence saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. This cousin young miss who suddenly appeared was simply too daring. She was courting death. "Stop!" A shout came from afar. When Hong Ling saw the person walking over, her legs went weak and she almost collapsed to the ground. "Young miss, this is Zheng Mama, who specializes in teaching the Lan family's young misses the rules." Yun Shujiu looked at the old woman who was walking over and narrowed her eyes. "Zheng Mama?" Hong Ling had once told her that the first madam, Zhuang Shi, originally intended to ask Zheng Mama to teach her etiquette, but was rejected by Zheng Mama. She said that she only taught the Lan family's proper master and not just anyone. Zhuang Shi had no choice but to hire someone else. However, she had not found a suitable candidate yet. Chapter 47:26 made them all kneel down just as Yun Shujiu was thinking about it. Zheng Mama had already walked in front of her. There was a hint of disdain on her stern face. "Miss Cousin, are you here to show off in the ancestral residence? No wonder the First Lady of the Third Chamber asked me to teach you etiquette. As expected, you are from a lower continent. You don't know the rules at all. Is this a place where you can behave atrociously? Why aren't you letting go of Xiang Yuan?" Yun Shujiu laughed lightly. "Since you call yourself an old servant, you should have the self-awareness of being a servant. Why are you teaching me etiquette? Don't you know how to address your master respectfully when you see him? Also, you, a servant, actually dare to order your master to do things? Have you learned your rules from a dog's stomach?" Zheng Mama's old face flushed red. Even Zhuang Shi had to be polite when speaking to her. How dare this wild girl reprimand her in front of everyone? "You? How dare you? Men, take her to the hall of punishment and punish her according to the 6th rule," Zheng Mama said angrily. Hong Ling was so scared that she fell to the ground. The 6th rule? This was to take their lives. Immediately, maids and guards rushed up and wanted to take Yun Shujiu and Hong Ling to the hall of punishment. "Stop! If any of you dare to touch me today, I will kill you." Yun Shujiu kicked Xiang Yuan away and took out the kitchen knife that was necessary for traveling at home. Zheng Mama sneered, "Do you really take yourself seriously? A good-for-nothing in the 6th layer of the Nirvana stage actually dares to cause trouble in the ancestral home. You really overestimate yourself." Yun Shujiu also sneered, "This is the Lan family's ancestral home, not your Zheng family's ancestral home. No matter what, a slave like you can't surpass me, your master." Even if the old ancestor knew what happened today, he had no reason to speak up for you. You, a dog slave, can decide whether I, the master, can be punished or not. If this gets out, it will be a huge joke. I don't believe that the old ancestor will allow you dog slaves to bully the juniors with his bloodline." Zheng Mama was stunned at first, then she snorted coldly, "You are sharp-tongued, but the ancestral house has its rules. The young masters have to be punished for their mistakes. This is the rule set by the old ancestor. What are you waiting for? Take her down." The guards and maids were used to being arrogant and domineering. Even a proper master like Lan Luosang was polite to them, so they naturally would not buy Yun Shujiu's words. Hearing this, they immediately rushed forward, wanting to take Yunchujiu and Hong Ling down. Hong Ling's mind was blank. She felt that both she and Yunchujiu would die today. Just as she was in a daze, she heard Jing Mama scream. She came back to her senses and saw that Yunchujiu had already placed a large kitchen knife on Jing Mama's neck. Although Jing Mama had a high status, her spiritual power was actually not high. She was not much different from Xiang Yuan. It was only because she was more proficient in the etiquette of aristocratic families that she had her current status. Old pious woman, why are you shouting? You are just a dog servant and you still want to teach me a lesson? How dare you? Jing Mama said with a fierce look on her face, but she was cowardly on the inside. You are courting death. Quickly let me go, or else you will die. You are disrespectful to me, and you even tried to incite these people to take my life. Do you think I will let you go? Don't you know the rules the best? Now, you make these people kneel down and kowtow to admit their mistakes. Otherwise, I will kill you. Yunchujiu's subordinates exerted a little more force, and a cut was made on Jing Mama's neck. Jing Mama screamed in pain. I will count to 3. If you don't do as I say, I will kill you. 1, 2. Chapter 47:27 Kneel, all of you, kneel. Jing Mama was afraid that Yunchujiu would really kill her, so she quickly shouted. The guards and maids did not dare to disobey, so they could only kneel on the ground. The corner of Yunchujiu's mouth curled up. Is it not enough to just kneel? Let them kowtow and admit their mistakes. Just say that they looked down on others and neglected me, their master. Jing Mama's old face was purple with anger, but she did not dare to disobey. She quickly said, do as she says, quickly. The guards and maids could only kowtow and say that they were looking down on others. Each and every one of them was so aggrieved that they wanted to vomit blood. They hated Yunchujiu in their hearts. This Yunchujiu was really courting death. She would suffer in a while. Yunchujiu looked at the people kneeling on the ground and curled the corners of her lips. This is what a slave should look like. Otherwise, others would think that the Lan family really has no one. Yes, it's you. Tell me, what did you do wrong? The person Yunchujiu pointed at was the guard who opened the door for her. The guard gritted his teeth and said, I shouldn't have looked down on others and neglected Miss Cousin. You don't even know how to use the honorific title? Hong Ling, go over and slap your face. Yunchujiu snorted coldly. Hong Ling also understood now that she was definitely going to die today. Since that was the case, then she would be an upright person. Hence, she got up, walked in front of the guard and gave him 2 tight slaps. The guard stared at Hong Ling viciously, as if he wanted to kill her. Hong Ling was shocked by his gaze, but when she thought that she would not be able to live anyway, she was filled with anger and kicked the guard. Why are you staring? Do you want to disobey my lattice orders? The corner of Yunchujiu's mouth twitched. This little girl really learned quickly. The veins on the guard's forehead were so angry that they were popping out. However, due to the fact that Jing Mama was in Yunchujiu's hands, he could only kneel on the ground and remain silent. At this moment, some members of the Lan family who were cultivating in the cultivation room or reading in the library rushed over when they heard the news. When they saw the scene in front of them, they were all dumbfounded. These servants of the ancestral residence usually showed off their might and did not put their young masters in their eyes at all. Especially that Jing Mama, who was even more arrogant than the mistress of the household. They actually fell into the hands of this Yunchujiu today. This Yunchujiu was really audacious. She was asking for death by acting like a demon. One of the girls wearing red clothes glared at Yunchujiu angrily and shouted, "You trash! Why aren't you letting go of Jing Mama? You are dragging down the entire third branch, you ingrate." Hong Ling whispered, "Miss, this is our third branch's Miss Luofang. Or are you used to being bullied by these slaves and already think that they are the masters?" Lan Luofang choked on her words. During her etiquette class, she was often punished by Zheng Mama. To be honest, she was very happy to see Zhang Mama in such a sorry state. However, Yun Shujiu, this country bumpkin, belonged to the three of them. Now that the matter had become so big, even her grandfather would be implicated by her. Especially when she saw that the people from the eldest and second branches were gloating, she hated Yun Shujiu even more. She walked in front of Yun Shujiu angrily and wanted to snatch Zhang Mama from Yun Shujiu's hands. However, she did not expect that when she pulled Zhang Mama's neck was cut by a large kitchen knife. Chapter 47:28. She committed suicide. Zhang Mama's head fell to the ground. Lan Luofang looked at the corpse in her hand and screamed, almost passing out. At this time, Yun Shujiu said with a smile, "Sister Luofang, it seems that I have wronged you. You were more ruthless than me. I just wanted to scare this old pious woman, but you killed her directly." Lan Luofang was scared and angry at the same time. She pointed at Yun Shujiu with a trembling finger and said, You're talking nonsense. It was you who killed her, not me, not me." Yun Shujiu shrugged and said, "Sister Luofang, you can't open your eyes and lie. You were the one who killed her. What does it have to do with me?" Lan Luofang was already very scared, but she actually fainted in anger at He Xinjiu. Yun Shujiu, her mental endurance was too weak. When the guards and maids saw that Zhang Mama was dead, they immediately did not have any scruples and surrounded Yun Shujiu, Hongling, and the fainted Lan Luofang. Hongling had already thought things through. At worst, she would just die, so she was not as scared as before. However, she really could not understand. Was this cousin Miss really brainless? Was she really not afraid of death by acting like a demon? She looked sympathetically at Lan Luofang, who had fainted on the ground. This Miss Luofang was really unlucky. This time, even if she was not an accomplice, she would still be punished. At this moment, Lan Luofang's maid, Zihua, squeezed into the crowd and woke Lan Luofang up. She was scared out of her wits earlier. Otherwise, she would have come over long ago. Lan Luofang was only in a moment of anger and anxiety, but she quickly woke up. When she saw Yun Shujiu standing calmly at the side, she wished she could strangle her to death. However, the most important thing now was how to clear her name, otherwise. When she thought of the punishment from the Hall of Punishment, Lan Luofang shuddered. She was so regretful that her intestines turned green. If she had known earlier, she would not have rushed up to stop Yun Shujiu no matter what. Yun Shujiu squatted in front of her with a smile and whispered into her ear, "Sister Luofang, if you don't want to be punished, then shut up obediently and don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, I won't be able to recover, and you won't be able to recover either." Before Lan Luofang could react, the maids and guards who had surrounded them made way, and an old man walked over. Hongling quickly reminded Yun Shujiu, "Miss, this is housekeeper Su from the ancestral home." As the Lan family's ancestor rarely showed his face, housekeeper Su held an important position in the Lan family's ancestral home. Even Lan Dimeo had to treat him with respect. Housekeeper Su looked at Xiang Yuan's swollen face and finally recognized her. He then looked at the corpse of Nanny Su on the ground and then looked at Yun Shujiu. "Young miss, is what Xiang Yuan said true?" Yun Shujiu blinked her eyes. "Xiang Yuan was indeed beaten up by me, but Zhang Mama committed suicide. It has nothing to do with me. Sister Luofang can help me prove it." Lan Luofang staggered and almost fell to the ground. "Suicide? You really dare to say that?" However, she remembered what Yun Shujiu had said before. She thought that if she told the truth, she would not be able to get away with it, so she did not say anything and took it as a tacit agreement. Chapter 47:29. Lan Dimeo is here. Xiang Yuan said sharply. Zhang Mama either committed suicide or she hacked her to death with a large kitchen knife. Everyone has seen it. Xiang Yuan blamed Yun Shujiu for two reasons. Firstly, she hated Yun Shujiu. Secondly, Lan Luofang's mother, Jia Shi, was not a kind person. She did not want to offend Jiashi. The guards and maids who were forced to kneel by He Xinjiu immediately agreed. If they could not teach Yunchujiu a lesson today, the status of the servants in their ancestral residence would plummet in the future. Naturally, they spared no effort to speak up for Xiang Yuan. Hong Ling watched from the side and thought, see, this ancestor was so evil before. Now that karma had come, no one spoke up for her. However, she also thought that even if the previous incident did not happen, these people would not speak up for Yunchujiu. Housekeeper Su swept his gaze across the crowd. Everyone immediately shut their mouths out of fear. Only then did he look at Yunchujiu. What do you have to say? Yunchujiu chuckled. Housekeeper Su, forget about the fact that this Zheng Mama really committed suicide. Even if I killed her, as the master, do I still need to answer to you for killing a servant? The moment Yunchujiu's words left her mouth, the entire place fell silent. Not to mention the servants, even the faces of the young masters of the Lan family changed drastically. This Yunchujiu was really good at killing. Housekeeper Su was also a little stunned. Obviously, he did not expect Yunchujiu to be so arrogant to the extent that she dared to speak to him like this. At this moment, someone rushed over from the door. Everyone saluted, third elder. When Yunchujiu saw Lan Dimeo, her arrogant look turned into a pitiful one. She cried, Uncle, Grandpa, you're finally here. I'm going to be bullied to death. Lan Luofang, who was standing next to her, was dumbfounded. She had never seen such a shameless person. It was not strange that Lan Dimeo would come. The commotion here was so big that the little masters of the third house naturally had to send him a message. Otherwise, if the matter got out of hand, the entire third house would be implicated. Lan Dimeo was simply scared silly by the news. What the hell? That little trash not only beat up the first-class maid of the ancestral residence, but also killed Zheng Mama? Although the messenger said that Zheng Mama's death was related to Lan Luofang, Lan Dimeo subconsciously thought that Yunchujiu did it on purpose. Lan Dimeo angrily smashed his favorite teapot on the table and rushed over angrily. Now seeing Yunchujiu's crying appearance, he was even more furious and reached out to beat her up. Yunchujiu was so smart. How could she be stupid enough to wait for a beating? She quietly pushed Xiang Yuan, who was gloating beside her, and Lan Dimeo's big palm landed on Xiang Yuan's face, directly knocking her out. Great uncle, you are really my great uncle. You hit him so well. This dog slave should be beaten up for offending his superior. He Xinjiu said with a smile. Lan Dimeo was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He clearly wanted to hit her, okay? He had planned to give Yunchujiu a slap and then take her away. Housekeeper Su couldn't say anything, but now, he had knocked out the maid of the ancestral residence. How could he make up for this? Housekeeper Su was also dumbfounded. He was a little confused. This third elder was here to support Yunchujiu? At this moment, Housekeeper Zu's expression changed. Then, he said to Yunchujiu, the old ancestor wants to see you. Follow me. Chapter 47:30. The old ancestor summoned her. Everyone present, including Lan Dimeo, was shocked. The old ancestor wanted to see Yunchujiu? One had to know that unless the old ancestor had something important to do, she would always be cultivating in seclusion in the courtyard. Now, she actually wanted to see this Yunchujiu? Even if she had caused a big trouble, she could just give the order to punish her directly. Why did she want to see her personally? Yunchujiu said with a smile, all right, I was just about to go and kowtow to my ancestor to pay my respects. Let's go. This fellow took a few steps before turning around to say to Hong Ling, you follow Sister Luofang for now and wait for me to come back here. After saying that, Yunchujiu glanced at Lan Luofang, her eyes full of warning. Lan Luofang was so angry that she was twitching. She naturally knew what Yunchujiu meant. She wanted her to protect Hong Ling's life, or else she would use Zheng Mama's matter to threaten her. However, Her heart was in a mess now, so she could only nod slightly. Yun Shujo said to Lan Dimeo again, "Uncle, don't worry. I'm so obedient and won't get into trouble. You should go back first. Anger will hurt your body." Lan Dimeo was so angry that his head was buzzing. If he knew this was a troublemaker, he would have slapped her to death back then. However, when he thought of the jade token, he was a little worried. What did the old ancestor want her to do? Could it be that he wanted to kill her? Even though he was very worried, the old ancestor of the Lan family was very powerful. Without a summons, he would not dare to disturb the old ancestor. On the other side, Yun Shujo followed housekeeper Su into the room. "Housekeeper Su, what do you think of me?" Yun Shujo asked with a smile. Housekeeper Su could not figure out what the old ancestor was thinking, so he said vaguely, "Naturally, you are different." Yun Shujo smiled even more brightly. "Housekeeper Su, you should know that this servant will always be a servant. No matter how powerful he is, he will always be a servant. The servants in the ancestral residence are a little too arrogant. Only you are passable." Housekeeper Zu's body stiffened and a flash of anger appeared in his eyes. However, he quickly returned to normal and said, "Miss, you're new here. Some things may not be what you see." Yun Shujo suddenly stopped in her tracks. "Are you saying that I'm blind?" Housekeeper Su, Yun Shujo curled her lips. "It's best if you don't dare. Otherwise, it would be bad if I kill you too. After all, I'm such a kind person. I don't want to have too much blood on my hands." Housekeeper Su almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Where did this stupid girl get her courage and confidence from? Was she not afraid that the old ancestor would want to kill her if he saw her? When Yun Shujo saw housekeeper Zu's aggrieved look, she pursed her lips in her heart. When she learned that the old ancestor of the Lan family wanted to see her, she was very sure that she would not die. Because, if he wanted to kill her, the Lan family's patriarch would not see her. However, she now had a doubt in her heart. That was, what kind of relationship did the Lan family have with the divine devil hall? She would not naively think that Lan Luochen was colluding with the divine devil hall. This patriarch would not know that the Lan family's great house did not have the guts to deceive him. Moreover, she was also certain that this Lan family's patriarch knew about her relationship with Lan Luochen. Since he knew but did not send anyone to kill her, it meant that he did not have the intention to kill her for the time being. Or perhaps, he had a reason not to kill her. Chapter 47:31 Going to reward me? The Lan family's ancestral residence was very large. Yun Shujo and housekeeper Su walked for nearly an hour before they arrived at a courtyard. There were many guards standing outside. Each of them looked very ordinary. They were so ordinary that they could not be recognized in the crowd. Yun Shujo naturally would not think that these guards were very ordinary. These people must have been carefully selected. Only with such looks would it be advantageous to carry out the mission. Housekeeper Su did not let Yun Shujo go in directly. Instead, he went in first. Yun Shujo pursed her lips. Even if she used her toes to think, she knew that this old man had gone in to complain. She was not worried about what he would say. Since the old ancestor had asked her to come, it meant that someone had already told him what had happened. Whatever housekeeper Su said was superfluous. A moment later, housekeeper Su walked out with a hint of pride in his eyes. "Miss Cousin, come in with me." Yun Shujo looked at him with a faint smile. "Housekeeper Su, did you go to complain just now?" Housekeeper Su staggered. Before he could think of a way to say it, he saw Yun Shujo had already entered the courtyard and walked forward. He gritted his teeth and followed her. There were many flowers and plants in the courtyard, as well as rockery and flowing water. Those who were not in the know would think that they had entered a garden. Beside the stone table in the courtyard sat an old man with white hair and beard. Although his age was unknown, his eyes emitted a bright light. "Old ancestor. My old ancestor. I finally meet you. Little Gio has admired you for a long time. You are exactly the same as you in my dream. Is this the power of blood? Hei Shinjo said with tears in her eyes. Housekeeper Sue shivered. Even the old ancestor of the Lan family was shocked. The teacup in his hand almost fell off. Old ancestor, you look too young. You are even younger than my uncle and grandfather. You must have some kind of maintenance secret, right? I get it. Looking at the decorations in your courtyard, this is a natural Dao technique. You're really too wise. You're really a role model for us to learn from. Old ancestor, let's not talk about other things. The fact that you set up your ancestral house alone shows that you're farsighted and thoughtful. With an old ancestor like you in the Lan family, it's no wonder that you can dominate a region in the Chongshao continent. You're the most brilliant leader of the Lan family. Housekeeper Sue, who was standing at the side, was dumbfounded. Moreover, if the old ancestor did not like to hear it, he would have interrupted her long ago. Why would he let her kiss for such a long time? Yun Shujo talked for a long time and then said shamelessly, Old ancestor, my mouth is dry. Can you give me a cup of tea to drink? The old ancestor of the Lan family glanced at Housekeeper Sue. Housekeeper Sue poured a cup of tea for Yun Shujo while holding back the blood in his mouth. Miss, please have some tea. Hei Shinjo picked up the cup and sipped the tea. Then she looked at Housekeeper Sue. Housekeeper Sue gritted his teeth and poured another cup for this guy. Yun Shujo drank the water in the teacup in one gulp. Then, she said with a smile, Old ancestor, you called me here. Are you going to reward me? Housekeeper Sue snorted in his heart. This damn girl is simply daydreaming. Reward you? It's already good enough that old ancestor didn't kill you. Chapter 4732 ended here. The old ancestor of the Lan family raised his eyes and glanced at Yun Shujo. Yun Shujo felt that all her thoughts had been seen through by this one glance. She cursed in her heart. As expected, he was old and cunning. This old thing was most likely going to become a demon. Just as this fellow was thinking, he heard the old ancestor of the Lan family say, You have turned the ancestral house upside down. Why should I reward you? Housekeeper Zu's eyes flashed with a hint of schadenfreude. Did you hear that? You want a reward? Dream on. Ancestor, you let the juniors come to the ancestral mansion to cultivate and read. You want to raise a group of wolves, not a group of obedient sheep. The juniors that even the servants are afraid of are definitely not what you want to see. Therefore, shouldn't I be rewarded for being brave, resourceful, and courageous? Yun Shujo said with a smile. Housekeeper Sue was stunned when he heard that. He was not stupid to be able to reach this position. He was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. The ancestor usually indulged them and did not think much of them. He was just training the masters of the Lan family to be sharpeners. Yun Shujo was right. No matter how powerful a servant was, he was still a servant. The ancestor glanced at Yun Shujo and did not show any surprise. What you said makes sense, but there are no rules. I was wrong, and you shouldn't have punished me. If everyone copied you, wouldn't there be no rules in the ancestral house? Old ancestor, what you said makes sense. I thought it was too simple. If not, you are wise and wise. Our Lan family is really blessed to have a leader like you. Housekeeper Sue looked at Hei Shinjo, who had a look of admiration on her face. He thought to himself, this stinky girl is not only capable of other things, but she is also extremely good at sucking up to others. Perhaps there is no one like her before or after. Forget it. Let's call it a day. You can leave now. Forefather waved his hand and ordered her to leave. Thank you, Forefather. Then little Gio will leave now. Little Gio will come to pay her respects to you often in the future. Hei Shinjo bowed respectfully and then left the courtyard. Housekeeper Su saw Yun Chuzhou leave and quickly knelt on the ground. Old ancestor, old slave. Old ancestor waved his hand. What happened in the past? What happened in the future? Leave now. Housekeeper Su did not dare to say anything more and bowed and left. When he left the courtyard, he saw Yun Chuzhou waiting for him with a smile. Housekeeper Su, are you disappointed that the old ancestor did not punish me? Housekeeper Zu's face stiffened. I don't dare. Housekeeper Su felt a mouthful of blood rush to his throat. He gritted his teeth and said, what Miss Cousin said is right. This old servant will instruct them. Housekeeper Su, actually, I still think highly of you. In the future, well, come and go often. I still have a lot of places to rely on you. You can keep this money and drink tea. As she spoke, Yun Chuzhou handed over to Housekeeper Su a low-grade spirit stone. Housekeeper Su, this smelly girl must have done it on purpose. He was the great housekeeper of the ancestral residence, yet he was worth a low-grade spirit stone. This was simply going too far. Housekeeper Su, what? Do you think it's too little? Have you forgotten that sentence? The thunder and rain dew are all the grace of the king. Not to mention that in rewarding you with a low-grade spirit stone, even if I'm rewarding you with a stone, you should still be grateful. Yun Chuzhou said coldly. Chapter 47:33. The speed at which one's face changes. Housekeeper Su was furious. Was what Yun Chuzhou said reasonable? Of course it was reasonable. However, the premise was that his master was the old ancestor and not this little girl in front of him. He was really furious. Do you think that I have no right to say that? Yun Chuzhou looked at him with a cold smile. Housekeeper Zu's heart trembled. Could this little girl read his mind? How could she know what he was thinking? The aura around Yun Chuzhou suddenly became extremely stern as she said faintly, it's true that you are the ancestor's slave, but I am the ancestor's favorite junior, so you are naturally my slave. So, in the future, whether you are in front of me or behind me, don't play any tricks. Otherwise, I don't care if you are some great housekeeper or not, I will kill you regardless of whether you deserve to be killed. Housekeeper Su was already unable to ridicule Yun Chuzhou for saying something like, the ancestor's favorite junior, because he was so shocked by Yun Chuzhou's sudden release of killing intent that he staggered, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He really didn't understand. This stinky girl was clearly only at the 6th level of the Nirvana stage, so how could she make him, who was at the 5th level of the extreme spiritual stage, tremble in fear? Could it be that this was the reason why the ancestor valued her? Housekeeper Su had been in the ancestral residence for a long time, so he naturally understood the old ancestor's temper. If it were in the past, he would not have the mood to care about the affairs of the younger generation. However, today, not only did he make an exception to summon this Yun Chuzhou, he even let her off lightly. It was definitely because he saw her in a different light. Thinking of this, Housekeeper Su could not help but quiver. He was really muddle-headed. He was just a servant. He would do whatever his master told him to do. Why did he have to get involved in some unnecessary muddy waters? Miss Cousin, this old servant has learned his lesson. This way, please. Housekeeper Su said respectfully. Yun Chuzhou glanced at Housekeeper Su. She knew that the old man had thought it through, so she smiled and said, Housekeeper Su, don't mind what I said before. After all, I'm new here. If I'm too weak to be bullied, I won't be able to live in the future. Don't worry. I know the difference between kindness and hatred. As long as you treat me sincerely, I won't mistreat you. Housekeeper Su was about to cry. This guy's change of expression was too fast. Was this a slap to give him a sweet date? However, what could he say? He only smiled bitterly and said, what Miss Cousin said is true. This old servant understands. Yun Chuzhou nodded. If it was an ordinary servant, she would not have bothered to spend so much effort. However, since this Housekeeper Su was able to achieve this position, he was naturally transparent. If she did not teach housekeeper Sue a lesson, her days in the ancestral residence in the future would be difficult to endure. However, she did not understand what the old ancestor of the Lan family meant. There was still a long way to go. She would slowly test him in the future. No matter what, he did not capture her and send her to the Divine Devil Hall. This meant that there was still a chance for things to turn around. Take it slow. There was no rush. At this moment, Lan Di Mayo and the others were still waiting on the spot. Each of them had different thoughts. Although Lan Di Mayo was angry at Yun Shujo for causing trouble, he did not want her to lose her life. Hong Ling did not need to say much. She naturally hoped that Yun Shujo was safe and sound. Lan Luofang's feelings were a little complicated. On one hand, she hated Yun Shujo for setting her up. On the other hand, she hoped that Yun Shujo would be safe and sound. That way, she would be able to escape. As for the people from the main branch, the second branch, and the servants of the ancestral residence, they naturally hoped that Yun Shujo would be severely punished and killed. Chapter 47-34 Don't seek death. Just as everyone was thinking about it, they saw Yun Shujo swagger back. What surprised everyone even more was that housekeeper Sue was following behind her. His attitude was completely different from before. He was very respectful and humble, just like how he usually treated Lan Di Mayo and the other two. Everyone was dumbfounded. What was going on? Not only did Yun Shujo not receive any punishment, but it seemed that she had also won the favor of the old ancestor. If it was not for the favor of the old ancestor, housekeeper Sue would not be so respectful to her. How was this possible? Yun Shujo strolled in front of Lan Di Mayo and said with a smile, "Great uncle, the old ancestor was very wise and wise. Not only did he not punish me, but he even praised me for my courage. Are you relieved now?" Lan Di Mayo's face was stiff. The old ancestor praised her for her courage? Did the old ancestor take the wrong medicine today? Before Lan Di Mayo could speak, Yun Shujo said again, "Great uncle, I still have to go to the library to read books. I won't chat with you anymore. Hong Ling, let's go." As Yun Shujo said this, she walked away while everyone was stunned. However, this fellow quickly turned his head and shouted, "Housekeeper Sue, send someone to lead the way for me." Housekeeper Sue had no choice but to randomly order a maid. "Go and help the young miss lead the way. Have a good attitude and don't court death." The maid shivered and quickly went to lead the way for Yun Shujo. Housekeeper Zu's words just now could be said to have set off a huge wave in everyone's hearts. Housekeeper Sue actually asked that maid to have a good attitude towards Yun Shujo. And he even said not to court death? Didn't he mean that Yun Shujia's status was not ordinary? Could it be that she really caught the eyes of the old ancestor? Lan Di Mayo called housekeeper Sue to the side and asked, "Housekeeper Sue, does the old ancestor like little Jill very much?" Housekeeper Sue said respectfully, "Third elder, this old servant does not dare to guess the old ancestor's thoughts. This old servant is just doing my duty." Lan Di Mayo looked at housekeeper Sue with some confusion. This housekeeper Sue must have taken the wrong medicine, right? Although housekeeper Sue was usually quite respectful to him, he was not as respectful as he was now. What was going on? Housekeeper Sue saw that Lan Di Mayo did not say anything, so he let the guards and maids leave. Then, he turned around and left. When the others saw that there was no more excitement to watch, although they had many guesses in their hearts, they still went to do what they should do. Yun Shujo was accompanied by the maid to the library of the ancestral residence. The appearance of the library did not look grand. It was just a courtyard, but Yun Shujo knew that there must be something else going on inside. As expected, after entering, she discovered that there was a different world inside. Just the first level alone had tens of thousands of books. Yun Shujo was like a fish in the sea. She immediately picked up a book and started reading. On the other side, a person stood in front of the Lan family's patriarch. If Yun Shujo was here, she would definitely recognize that this person was Yuan Ji. That Yun Shujo is the woman Luo Chen likes? Is it because of her that he lost half of his life? The Lan family's patriarch asked in a deep voice. Yes, Yuan Ji answered respectfully. To be honest, he had some resentment towards Yun Shujo. If it weren't for her, his master wouldn't have fallen to this state. However, he didn't understand why his master had deliberately revealed Yun Shujia's grandmother's identity to the third elder this time. Putting aside how dangerous the Lan family was, wasn't he afraid that his ancestor would harm Yun Shujo? Chapter 47-35. How good fortune will be depends on her. The eyes of the Lan family's patriarch flickered, but he didn't say anything. He just waved his hand and asked Yuan Ji to leave. After Yuan Ji left, a masked man walked out of the room. Master. What do you think? The patriarch asked faintly. This woman is quick-witted and intelligent, but her personality is a bit jumpy and not very useful. Do you want me to kill her directly to prevent young Master Luo Chen from being bewitched by this woman again? The man said respectfully. The old ancestor shook his head. The love tribulation can only be broken by himself. If we intervene, it will only backfire. In addition, the blood of the Lan family also flows in that little girl's body. Perhaps, the old ancestor did not continue speaking, but changed the topic. You don't have to interfere in this matter. It's up to her to decide on her own fate. Yes. On the other side, Yun Shujo was engrossed in reading when she was ejected out of the library. This fellow had a dumbfounded look on his face. Hong Ling, who had been waiting all this time, quickly went forward and said, Miss, the library will send the people inside out at the stipulated time. Yun Shujo looked left and right. It was really true. Not only her, but a few other people were also sent out. Those people probably did not know what Yun Shujo had done previously, so they looked at her with a look of inquiry and disdain. They did not say anything and left. Miss, it's almost dark. Let's go back, Hong Ling said. Yun Shujo nodded. Although she wanted to go to the old ancestor's place to shamelessly freeload, she could not figure out the old thing's thoughts at the moment, so it was better to be obedient. As soon as the master and servant entered the door of the third room, they saw Lan Luofang's maid, Zi Hua, coming up to greet them. Miss, my lady invites you. Zi Hua's attitude was very respectful. What a joke. This person even dared to kill the Zheng Mama of the ancestral residence. Unless she was courting death, she would only offend her. Yun Shujo nodded. Lead the way. We can go to Sister Luofang's place to freeload a meal. Zi Hua, Lan Luofang was pacing around the house anxiously. Although no one was looking into the matter in the afternoon, she was still uncertain. That was why she asked Zi Hua to stop Yun Shujo at the door. Sister Luofang, what delicious food did you prepare for me? I'm starving to death. Hei Xinjia's voice came before she arrived. Yun Shujo sat on the chair and crossed her legs. Sister Luofang, this is your fault. If I hadn't been defending you, you would have been punished in the punishment hall. It's fine if you don't appreciate me, but why are you blaming me? Lan Luofang was even angrier when she saw her careless behavior. You know what happened. You put the knife back and everything was fine, but you used force, so Zheng Mama died. Yun Shujo picked up a fruit on the coffee table and took a few bites. She said impatiently, an old servant is dead, so be it. Do you have to be so long-winded? The old ancestor doesn't want to pursue the matter, so don't worry about it. You. Lan Luofang choked and asked angrily, let me ask you, what did the old ancestor say to you? Why didn't he punish you? Yun Shujo blinked her eyes. If you want to know the answer, you have to answer me a question first. Chapter 47-36. Give me a bowl of rice to eat, what's the problem? Lan Luofang asked in a bad mood. There are 2 pots of flowers in my house. Did you give them to me? Yun Shujo asked when she saw the few pots of morning glow flowers in the house. Tui. You must have some face. I can't be bothered to give you any flowers. It's just that my mother heard that Lan Luoshan wanted to give you a pot of flowers, so she insisted that I give you one. That's why I gave you that pot of morning glow flowers. That morning glow flower is the seed my mother brought over from my maternal grandfather's house. In our Lan family, only my mother and I have it in our courtyard. When Lan Luofang said this, she looked rather pleased with herself. She heard that Yun Shijia's parents had been locked up by the Zen sect. She was really pitiful. Yun Shujo narrowed her eyes and asked again, "Second aunt does love me. She's much better than an ingrate like you." Lan Luofang was so angry that her face turned red. Don't flatter yourself. My mother has never been on good terms with first aunt. She always hopes that I can beat Lan Luoshan and compare myself to her in everything. That's why she asked me to send the morning glow flower before Lan Luoshan did. Yun Shijia's heart skipped a beat. According to Zhuang Shi and Lan Lushan's White Lotus attributes, they might have intentionally leaked the news. Moreover, they knew that the second branch would only send the morning glow flower. That way, their scheme would succeed. Of course, Jia Shi could not be completely excluded from this. As for Lan Luofang, she could basically be ignored. She was just a silly child. With such a temper, she had her parents to protect her. Otherwise, she would have been gnawed to death by the Lan family long ago. Seeing that Yun Shujo did not say anything, Lan Luofang urged her impatiently, "I have already answered your question. Hurry up and tell me, what did the old ancestor say to you?" Yun Shujo curled the corners of her lips. The old ancestor did not say anything, he only praised me for my courage and knowledge, and that I killed well. Lan Luofang's face was full of confusion. She obviously felt that Yun Shujo was talking nonsense. Yun Shujo shrugged her shoulders. You can believe it or not, the truth is like this anyway. Well, I'm starving to death, can you eat first? Go back to your own courtyard and eat. Lan Luofang said impatiently. Yun Shujo bared her little white teeth. Sister Luofang, please pity me. Give me a bowl of rice to eat. Lan Luofang, she had never seen such a shameless girl. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Yun Shujo said to Zihua, who was also stunned, "What are you still standing there for? Why aren't you preparing the rice? Do you want to starve your miss and me to death?" A moment later, the food was served. Yun Shujo never knew what courtesy was. She immediately picked up her chopsticks and started eating. Lan Luofang was angry when she saw her shameless look. She thought about it again. This was her portion. Why was it eaten by this good-for-nothing? Hence, she picked up her chopsticks and started eating quickly. She was afraid that Yun Shujo would eat up all the food. While they were eating enthusiastically, Lan Luoshan also received the news. She frowned. Although she had heard about the incident at the ancestral residence, she did not know too much about it. She did not believe it in her heart. How did Yun Shujo get the special care of the old ancestor? There must be a mistake in the rumors. She actually still hung out with that trash Lan Luofang? They really had the same bad taste. Miss Hongling is Madam's person. Do you need me to scout for information? Lan Lushan's maid Shui Qi asked carefully. Chapter 47-37, I won't lose face. Lan Luoshan shook her head. There's no need for that for now. I don't want to alert the enemy. I'd like to see what kind of trouble she can stir up. Besides, the people from the main branch and the second branch will take action soon. I just need to watch the show. Mrs. Wise, Cui Qi said flatteringly. On the other side, after He Xinzhou had a full meal, she shamelessly instructed Zihua to brew a pot of tea. While sipping the tea, she said, Sister Luofang, do you want to beat that Lan Luoshan? Lan Luofang replied unhappily, of course I do. But that Lan Luofeng is a good person. I rarely take advantage of her. I advise you to stop. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Thank you for your concern, Sister Luofeng. But I like to torture white lotus flowers, especially those pitiful white lotus flowers. Humph. I'm not concerned about you. I just don't want to be implicated by a good-for-nothing like you. You still want to help me suppress that Lan Luoshan? Do you know that Lan Luoshan has always been loved by the guest elders in the ancestral residence? Although Lan Luofeng had never heard of the term white lotus flowers, it did not prevent her from understanding the meaning behind Yun Shujia's words. Yun Shujo put down the teacup in her hand. Guest elders? She had heard from Hong Ling that there were several guest retainers living in the ancestral residence. They were all hired by the Lan family to teach the younger generation at a high price. These guest retainers affected the status of these young masters to a certain extent. After all, being valued by these guest retainers meant that they would have more opportunities to participate in trials than others. They could also obtain more family points. Moreover, these guest retainers also had a portion of points that could be used as rewards. Therefore, no one dared to offend these guest retainers. Even if they were to contradict them verbally, they would be sent to the Hall of Punishment for punishment. Seeing that Yun Shujo was silent, Lan Luofeng thought that she was afraid. She curled her lips and said, "All right, from now on, we will return to the same path. It has nothing to do with each other. You can scram now." Yun Shujo said with a smile, "All right, Sister Luofeng, then I will scram now. See you later." Lan Luofeng, before Yun Shujo could return to her own courtyard, she was invited to Lan Dimeo's courtyard by Zhu Yang. Lan Dimeo had some matters to deal with previously, so he took the time to call Yun Shujo over. Yun Shujo knew his intentions, so she did not hide it and told him everything. Lan Dimeo was stunned and did not speak for a long time. In other words, they were too timid and did not have the qualifications to become the family head. Lan Dimeo came back to his senses. When he looked at Yun Shujo again, his eyes flashed with curiosity. Did this little girl already know the ancestor's intention, or did she just hit the nail on the head? In the end, Lan Dimeo said, "From tomorrow onwards, on the odd days of the month, you will go to the cultivation class in the ancestral residence. Try to catch up with Luo Shan and the others as soon as possible." Yun Shujo nodded obediently. "Uncle, grandfather, don't worry. I won't embarrass you and the third branch." Lan Dimeo waved his hand and let her go. To be honest, even though he had changed his opinion of Yun Shujo, he did not have much confidence in her. The Lan family ate the weak while the strong ate the strong. She, this little trash, would be taught a lesson sooner or later. Yun Shujo brought Hong Ling back to her courtyard and asked her about the training hall before sending her away. Chapter 4738, When did I agree to you? Yun Shujo sat on the chair in a daze. Even though she seemed to be imposing today, she was actually very uncertain. She was just gambling. To be honest, she was really using her brain. She looked at her own hands and realized that they were still too weak. If she was stronger than that old ancestor, why would she need to flatter him? However, now she could only take advantage of the situation. If she could not gain a foothold in the Lan family, there was no way to get information about the pretty boy and his parents. However, this guy quickly adjusted his mentality. She was never afraid of any infighting because it was fun to fight with others. The scum of the Lan family, tremble. This guy was glad that the scum Lan Luochen was locked in the forbidden area. Otherwise, it would be really difficult. She wanted to do everything she wanted to do before he came out so that she would not be restricted by him. After thinking about his future plans, he began to wash up and then lay on the bed to rest. Just as Yun Shujo was about to fall asleep, But Face said with his spiritual sense, "Little fairy, little shadow has something to say to you." Yun Shujo frowned and took out the isolation array disc to test it. When she found that it could be used, she released Qi Ying. Why are you looking for me? Yun Shuzhou said impatiently. Qi Ying was so angry. Indeed, she didn't need to look back. When she tricked him into going to the Heaven's End cliff, this stupid girl was not like this. He suppressed the anger in his heart and said, I know the Chongshao continent well. With me by your side, it will be helpful to you. Why don't you leave me outside in the future and don't put me into the spiritual beast bag? Yun Shuzhou raised her eyebrows. Since you know so much about the Chongshao continent, tell me about the Zen sect. Qi Ying did not know that Yun Shuzhou's parents were trapped in the Zen sect. He thought that she was just curious and immediately said, the human cultivation in the world is divided into two major schools. One is to cultivate spiritual power, and the other is to cultivate Buddhist power. The Zen sect is a school that cultivates Buddhist power. There are all men in the school, and they are all monks. They are very rigid in their way of doing things, and they are a group of obstinate people. As long as they decide on something, no one can change it. In addition, their Buddhist power is superb. Ordinary people don't dare to provoke them. Oh. What about your divine devil hall? Are you also afraid of the Zen sect? Yun Shuzhou asked curiously. Yun Shuzhou sensed some fear from the disdain. Then she remembered that the collusion between the Lan family and the divine devil hall was secretly carried out. Perhaps the Zen sect was the one they were afraid of. If so, the Zen sect could be of some use. Is the bitter Zen sect the Zen sect? Yun Shuzhou continued to ask. Qi Ying's pupils contracted when he heard the words, bitter Zen sect. How do you know about the bitter Zen sect? Have you thought of something? Yun Shuzhou's heart skipped a beat. Judging from his reaction, the bitter Zen sect and the Zen sect were not the same thing. What else did she think of? Just as she was wondering, she heard Qi Ying say, the Zen sect was originally called the Zen of Suffering, but it was changed to the Zen sect tens of thousands of years ago. Only then did Yun Shuzhou let out a sigh of relief. As long as it was a family, it was good. It was probably because those monks did not want to suffer, so they removed the word suffering. Qi Ying's eyes flickered. I told you what I know. Can I not return to the spirit beast bag in the future? Yun Shuzhou smiled brightly at him. Idiot, when did I promise you? Chapter 4739. The miserable Qi Ying almost popped out his rabbit eyes. This wretched girl was getting more and more shameless. Little Shadow, don't be angry. I haven't finished speaking yet. I can ask anyone about such unimportant information like the Zen sect, so you have to provide me with some useful information. For example, where is the base of your godly demon palace, and what the hell is that dog shit master of yours? Don't even think about it. I will not betray our master. Qi Ying said angrily. Yun Shuzhou curled her lips. You are loyal to that dog shit master of yours, but I suspect that you don't know what I'm talking about. You are just a dispensable chess piece in the godly demon palace. A guilty look flashed across Qi Ying's eyes. However, he was too fast for Yun Shuzhou to see. Qi Ying snorted coldly. It's up to you. Anyway, I won't betray our master. Yun Shuzhou, if you don't treat me better, when you need something from me in the future, HMPH. Oh, you even learned to threaten? Don't you know that I'm not afraid of threats the least? But face, you better teach this rabbit a lesson. As Yun Shuzhou said this, she put the red shadow rabbit back into her spirit beast pouch. What greeted it was naturally the various tortures that Butt Face and the others had come up with. Qi Ying was secretly resentful. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. He did not believe that this wretched girl would not beg him. After Yun Shuzhou put Qi Ying away, she sighed. It was still fine with her parents. At least they knew that their lives were not in danger in the Zen sect. However, there had been no news of the pretty boy. Could something have happened? This guy thought again. If the jealous pretty boy knew that she had come to the Lan family, he would not be kind to her. This guy finally fell asleep in a daze. The next morning, after breakfast, Yun Shujo remembered that Lan Dimeo told her to go to the cultivation hall and left the courtyard with Hong Ling. Coincidentally, she met Lan Luofang. Sister Luofang, Grandpa told me to go to the training hall for lessons, so we can be together more often in the future. Are you happy? Are you surprised? Lan Luofang snorted with disdain. Do you think going to the training hall is a good thing? The people of the eldest and second branches are eager to find trouble with the third branch. You are just asking for trouble. Sister Luofang, I knew you cared about me. If someone bullied me, you wouldn't refuse to help me, would you? After all, we killed Zheng Mama together. We are all on the same side, He Xingjiu said with a smile. Lan Luofang was furious. She glared at her and left quickly. Sister Luofang, I heard that Zheng Mama has punished you a lot in the past. That's why you killed her yesterday, right? Lan Luofang was furious when she heard that she had killed Zheng Mama. Shut up. If you delay any longer, you will be punished. He Xingjiu grabbed Lan Luofang's arm. Sister Luofang, whatever you say is right. I'll listen to you. Lan Luofang felt her head buzzing. She was so regretful that her intestines were turning green. The two of them arrived at the ancestral residence and rushed to the training hall. Before Yun Shujo had the time to look at the decorations of the training hall, she heard someone gloating. Lan Luofang, today is guest Professor Zhu Qiking's class. You're going to be in trouble. Chapter 4740. Don't stoop to the level of birds. Lan Luofang's expression suddenly turned a little ugly. Lan Luofang, if you don't speak, no one will treat you as a mute. Lan Luofang smiled even more proudly. Lan Luofang, Zhu Keqing usually looks down on you the most. Moreover, you also know about the matter between Zhu Keqing and Nanny Su. Today, you will suffer. TSK, you actually got mixed up with this Yun Shujo. Indeed, birds of a feather flock together. Idiots should be together with trash. Lan Luofang was so angry that she was trembling. Lan Luofang, don't think that I won't dare to do anything to you in the ancestral residence. If you continue to spout nonsense, I won't hold back. If you have the ability, why don't you make a move? Not to mention that you don't dare to be impudent here. Even if you really dare to make a move, you are not my match. Aren't you just relying on your mother? Otherwise, you are nothing. Lan Luoyen said with some jealousy and hatred. Lan Luofang's mother, Jia Shi, had a strong personality. In addition, her mother's family's influence was not weak. Among the wives of the Lan family, she could definitely be considered as a valiant type. Therefore, even if Lan Luofang did not have any good intentions and her spiritual power was not high, others would not dare to do anything to her. They could only verbally humiliate her. Lan Luofang also cared about her face and would not tell these things to Jia Shi. As time passed, Lan Luoyen and the others became even more arrogant. Lan Luofang was angered by Lan Luofang until her eyes were red. However, she heard Yun Shujo beside her laugh lightly. Sister Luofang, why are you arguing with a little chick? She is so ugly and she still has the cheek to call her Luofang? Shameless. Lan Luofang saw Lan Luofang's light yellow clothes and really looked like a little chick. She couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lan Luoyen glared fiercely at Yun Shujo. You trash actually dared to scold me? You're courting death. So what if I scold you? You're ugly to begin with, and you're not allowed to let others say it? It's not your fault that you're ugly, but it's your fault that you came out to scare people. I don't know where you got the courage to call yourself Luofang, but it's true. You're so ugly that Diane fell to the ground because she was scared by you. Isn't that Luofang? Yun Shujo said with a smile. You. Lan Luoyen was so angry that she was about to speak, but Yun Shujo interrupted her. What do you mean you? You're just a little chick, what right do you have to criticize me and Sister Luofang? Get lost. Sister Luofang, let's not stoop to the level of birds. Where are our seats? Yun Shujo held on to Lan Luofang's arm and said with a smile. Lan Luofang saw that Lan Luofang was so angry that she was about to explode. She instantly felt that this Yun Shujo was not without merit, so she did not shake off her arm. She pointed to a corner and said, let's sit there. Lan Luoyen could only sit down hatefully. She thought to herself, Zhu Keqing and that Jing Mama were usually unclear. Lan Luofang, that bastard, killed Jing Mama. She would suffer. Yun Shujo sat on the chair and squinted her eyes as she looked around. Hong Ling had told her that unless it was a young master who was out training or carrying out a family mission, he would have to come to the training hall for lessons. He Xinjiu discovered that the moment Zhu Keqing came in, all the young masters were sitting upright with proper attitudes. This fellow could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Not to mention other things, the Lan family's old ancestor still had a way with this aspect. Chapter 47-41 Illusion. Zhu Keqing was an old man with gray hair. He did not look good. Yun Shujo cursed in her heart. No wonder he took a fancy to Zheng Mama. It was a perfect match. Zhu Keqing's eyes were a little red and swollen. His face was also very haggard. After entering, his malicious gaze looked at Lan Luofang and Yun Shujo in the corner. Lan Luofang could not help but shiver. Usually, this Zhu Keqing did not like her. Now that she had killed Jing Mama, this class would probably be very difficult to endure. Zhu Keqing walked to the round platform at the front and said with a somewhat hoarse voice, in the last class, I gave you a task. Now, I will check it. If there are any unfinished tasks, then you can only accept the punishment. When Lan Luofang heard this, her face turned pale and her body started to tremble. When Yun Shujo saw her like this, she knew what was going on without even thinking. She curled her lips in her heart. These people of the Lan family had been taught to be sheep. If it was her, Humph, a guest retainer wanted to punish her, he wouldn't die. Just as Yun Shujo was thinking, she heard Zhu Keqing say, Lan Luoyen, come to the front and show us. Yun Shujo was stunned. Oh, he didn't ask Lan Luofang but asked Lan Luoyen? Lan Luoyen didn't look nervous. She walked to the front and formed a seal with her hands. Then, she released her fire spiritual power. In an instant, the fire spiritual power turned into a dancing fire butterfly. It was very beautiful. Yun Shujo looked at the fire butterfly and remembered what she saw in the book collection pavilion yesterday. It was strange to say that the cultivation methods of the heavy cloud continent and the towering sky continent were different, but they were similar to the immortal origin continent. The people here didn't pay much attention to weapons, but rather, they paid attention to the control and change of spiritual power. To put it bluntly, there wasn't any essential difference from the spiritual power phantom art that Yun Shujo had learned in the immortal origin continent. However, the people of the heavy cloud continent could more freely change their spiritual power. Not only could they change their spiritual beasts, but they could also change other spiritual beasts or even spiritual insects to assist in battle. As for the grade and number of spiritual beasts, that would depend on one's comprehension and ability. Although the fire butterfly that Lan Luoyen had transformed into was not very good at attacking, its appearance was very lifelike. For her current level, it was already considered pretty good. As expected, Zhu Keqing nodded his head to express his satisfaction and let her return to her seat. Zhu Keqing then called out for Lan Luoshan to come forward. Lan Luoshan walked to the front with impeccable bearing. Her hands formed a seal and water spiritual power gushed out, instantly transforming into an arrow fish. It was very agile. This time, Zhu Keqing was even more satisfied. He nodded and let Lan Luoshan return to her seat. Every time the roll call was made, Lan Luofang's heart was in her throat. When she found out that it was not her, she was slightly relieved, but the next time, she was worried again. Yun Shuzhou pursed her lips. This guest elder Zhu Keqing definitely did this on purpose, just to torture Lan Luofang. How despicable. At first, Yun Shujia's attention was still on Lan Luofang, but very quickly, she was attracted by the spirit power illusion that everyone was displaying. This fellow cursed in her heart, other people could transform into butterflies and swordfish, but she seemed to only be able to transform into small purple needles and dehua. In the past, she could even release a group of little piglets with spirit power, but in the end, she could only release a dehua. Chapter 47-42, Shameless old thing. Just as He Xinjiu was cursing in her heart, she heard Zhu Keqing say, Lan Luofang, come forward and show me. Lan Luofang shivered, but she could only brace herself and walk to the front. She released her water spiritual power, and after a long while, a fish head appeared. The fish body behind her could not appear no matter what. She withdrew her spiritual power dejectedly, knowing that she would inevitably be punished. Sure enough, Zhu Keqing sneered again and again. Lan Luofang, what exactly are you learning every day? It's been so long, and you can't even materialize a fish. You're absolutely stupid. With your talent, you're only a student of the Lan family. Otherwise, you're not even qualified to be a concubine. The more Zhu Keqing spoke, the uglier his words became. Lan Luofang's face was flushed red, her eyes were bloodshot, and her body was trembling non-stop. Clearly, she was extremely indignant. Some of the young masters of the Lan family on the seats were gloating, some were indifferent, but none of them showed any sympathy. Yun Shuzhou pursed her lips. This Lan family was really heartless, a bunch of scum. She suddenly stood up, picked up the chair beside her and threw it at Zhu Keqing. Shut the fuck up. Can you scold my sister Luofang too? Shameless old thing. Zhu Keqing clearly did not expect Yun Shuzhou to come this way. Although he avoided the chair, he was still a little embarrassed. Lan Luofang looked in disbelief at Yun Shuzhou, who slowly walked to the front. Her nose was sore and she started to cry. Zhu Keqing stared at Yun Shuzhou coldly. He naturally knew that the culprit yesterday was this wretched girl. He did not expect that before he could deal with her, she had already delivered herself to his doorstep. Impudent. Yun Shuzhou, you actually dared to beat me. Are you trying to rebel? Men, escort the two of them to the punishment hall. Zhu Keqing said viciously. There were many guards outside the training hall, who were specially there to maintain order in the classroom. This was also one of the reasons why the young masters of the Lan family were very obedient. When the guards heard Zhu Keqing's words, they rushed into the training hall. Just as they were about to go forward, they heard Yun Shuzhou say faintly, if anyone is not afraid of death, then come here. It just so happens that my quota for killing people today is not used yet. Lan Luoyen could not help but curl her lips and say, a quota for killing? Are you crazy? Yun Shuzhou did not even look at her and coldly snorted, the old ancestor gave me 3 quotas for killing people a day. As long as there are no more than 3 people, he will not punish me. If you don't believe me, then come and try. When the guards heard this, they could not help but take a few steps back. Although they were skeptical, this person beat up Xiang Yuan yesterday and killed Jing Mama. Moreover, housekeeper Su was respectful to her. Could it really be true? Zhu Keqing gritted his teeth in anger. Don't listen to her nonsense. Arrest her. Zhu Keqing saw that the guards did not listen to his orders. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead popped. He reached out to grab Yun Shuzhou. He thought very simply that as long as he controlled Yun Shuzhou, she could only obediently go to the hall of punishment to receive punishment. Unfortunately, Yun Shuzhou was so smart, how could she let him have his way? This guy took out a bag of chili dough and threw it at Zhu Keqing. Zhu Keqing subconsciously slapped it. He was really unlucky. Although he later realized that he had set up the spiritual energy shield, he was still choked to the point that tears flowed down his face. He was in a sorry state. Chapter 47-43 damaged a chair. Not only Zhu Keqing, other than Lan Luofeng, who was dragged to the side by Yun Chuzhou, even the guards were choking and coughing. The guards cursed in their hearts. This cousin lady is too fucking mean. Who brings chili noodles to class? Is she here for class or to cook? Lan Luofeng was even more confused. At the same time, she was very worried. In the ancestral residence, the guest elder's status was quite high. Lan Lusang's elder brother, Lan Luohan, had once offended a guest elder and was severely punished by the Hall of Punishment. She had to lie in bed for 3 months before she could get out of bed. Not only had Yun Chuzhou smashed her chair, but she had also thrown a bag of chili noodles. This punishment would definitely not be light. Although she looked down on Yun Chuzhou, after all, Yun Chuzhou was standing up for her. She was more or less grateful. At this moment, there was a crash. Yun Chuzhou poured a bucket of cold water on Zhu Keqing's head and said shamelessly, "Zhu Keqing, let me help you flush it. Otherwise, your eyesight is not good to begin with, and it would be bad if you really became blind." Zhu Keqing instantly became a drowned rat, as embarrassed as he could be. Zhu Keqing was about to go mad. "Bitch, you are courting death." While cursing, Zhu Keqing released his spiritual power to Yun Chuzhou. His spiritual power instantly turned into a wolf and pounced on He Xinzhou with its bloody mouth wide open. Yun Chuzhou quickly jumped behind the guards and shouted, "This Zhu Keqing is crazy. He wants to kill me. Help me take him down." The guards were frustrated. Even if they didn't want to take Zhu Keqing down, they had to deal with the wolf that had turned into spiritual essence to protect themselves. Yun Chuzhou took the opportunity to signal Lan Luofeng with her eyes. She meant to run away. Lan Luofeng gritted her teeth. She knew that if Yun Chuzhou ran away, Zhu Keqing would definitely vent his anger on her. Therefore, she ran out of the training hall as well. However, where could she run to? "Take me to the punishment hall, quickly," He Xinzhou urged. Lan Luofeng was dumbfounded. Go to the punishment hall? Was she crazy? After making such a scene, she still took the initiative to go to the punishment hall? While Lan Luofeng was still in a daze, Yun Chuzhou pinched her. It hurt so much that she cried out in shock, "Yun Chuzhou, are you crazy?" Lan Luofeng had no other choice but to bring Yun Chuzhou to the Hall of Punishment. When Lan Luofeng saw the words "Hall of Punishment," her body couldn't help but tremble. She really didn't understand what Yun Chuzhou was up to. Yun Chuzhou dragged Lan Luofeng directly into the Hall of Punishment. Then, she said to a guard, "Call out the person who is in charge here. We are here to receive punishment." The guard was dumbfounded. He had been working in the Hall of Punishment for a long time, and this was the first time he saw someone take the initiative to receive punishment. However, after yesterday's incident, He Xinjia's reputation had spread throughout the ancestral residence. The guard did not dare to neglect her and immediately went in to deliver the letter. Soon, an old man walked out. Lan Luofeng said to Yun Chuzhou in a low voice, "This is Elder Ning of the Hall of Punishment. He is highly regarded by the old ancestor. Please don't court death." Elder Ning sized up the two of them and asked, "Are you here to receive punishment? What did you do wrong?" "Elder Ning, we damaged a chair in the Hall of Cultivation. We know that we were wrong, so we came to receive punishment. As the saying goes, leniency is given if you confess, and severity is given if you resist. We came here to surrender. Can we reduce the punishment?" Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes and said. Chapter 47-44 She was not smart in the first place. Elder Ning frowned. A chair was damaged. This was not a big mistake. How could she take the initiative to receive punishment? Didn't they say that Yunchujo was very naughty? Why was it different from what they had heard? Forget it. It's just a chair being damaged. Moreover, you guys can take the initiative to receive punishment. Let's forget about this matter. You guys can go back. Elder Ning said. Yunchujo said with a smile, Elder Ning, you really have the heart of a bodhisattva. We will definitely not make the same mistake again in the future. We will take our leave now. Yunchujo was just about to leave with the stiff-faced Lan Luofang when she heard someone behind her say in a flustered and exasperated manner, Elder Ning, these two bastards have disturbed the order of the classroom and even beat up the guest elder. They deserve to be severely punished. The person who spoke was none other than Zhu Keqing. The reason why he had only come over now was that no one had shown him the way. After he came out of the cultivation hall, Yunchujo and Lan Luofang had long disappeared. Those maids and guards were afraid that Yunchujo would take revenge on them, so no one dared to tell them where Yunchujo went. Zhu Keqing could only search every courtyard. He never thought that Yunchujo and Lan Luofang would come to the punishment hall, so he had to delay for a while before he found them. Zhu Keqing was in a terrible state now. His wet hair stuck to his scalp, and his originally red and swollen eyes were now swollen like a monkey's butt. It was simply too horrible to look at. Elder Ning was stunned for a moment, and then he asked, what exactly happened? Zhu Keqing said ferociously, this Yunchujo not only threw a chair at me, but also threw a bag of chili noodles at me. She's simply lawless. Elder Ning, so this was how Yunchujo said that she damaged a chair in the cultivation hall? Just as Elder Ning was in a daze, he heard Yunchujo say pitifully, Zhu Keqing, you can't lie through your teeth. Let me ask you, did the chair hit you? It was only because I let go of the chair that it fell in front of you. It didn't hurt you at all. As for the chili noodles, you wanted to kill me. I did it to protect myself. Compared to your spirit beast, my chili noodles are already very merciful, okay? Moreover, you even called me a little slut. I'm a little slut. Then, won't the old ancestor become an old slut? You actually dared to scold the old ancestor. Aren't you going too far? Zhu Keqing was so angry that he was trembling. Nonsense. If you didn't hit me with the chair and resist the arrest of the guards, would I have made a move? Zhu Keqing, since you said so, then I really have to talk to you. It's fine if you scold my sister Luofang for being stupid, after all. She wasn't very smart in the first place. Lan Luofang, she doesn't want to lose face, right? But, you said that Sister Luofang isn't qualified to be anyone's concubine, and that she can't even be compared to the cauldron of the Cauldron Hall. Is this what people call her? A person like you doesn't have the qualifications to be a teacher. I was also in a moment of anger and accidentally broke a chair. You even released your spiritual beast to kill me. I even suspect that you're a spy sent by some sworn enemy of the Lan family. Clearly, you don't have good intentions. Yunchujo said angrily. Zhu Keqing was so angry that he wanted to go up and strangle her to death. He explained, Elder Ning, don't listen to her nonsense. It's not like that at all. If you don't believe it, you can ask the other young masters of the Lan family who are present. Chapter 47-45 ran away. Zhu Keqing thought to himself that those young masters of the Lan family would definitely not speak up for that bitch Yunchujo. At that time, he would be able to confirm her crime. Elder Ning looked at the people of the Lan family who followed closely behind and asked in a deep voice, between the two of them, which one of them is telling the truth? Lan Luoyen quickly said, Elder Ning, what Zhu Keqing said is absolutely true. Yunchujo not only disturbed the order of the classroom, but also called Zhu Keqing a shameless old man. The few people who were close to Lan Luoyen also confirmed what Zhu Keqing said, and they were all gloating. They had never taken a fancy to this cousin who suddenly appeared. Moreover, What happened yesterday made them both jealous and hateful. How could Yun Shujo be summoned by their ancestor? She deserved to be punished. Elder Ning frowned and looked at Yun Shujo. What else do you have to say? Yun Shujo smiled as she took out a recording stone. After activating it, Zhu Qing's harsh voice came from inside. With your talent, you're only a student of the Lan family. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be qualified to be a concubine. Zhu Qing never would have dreamed that Yun Shujo would secretly record the voice. He immediately revealed a bit of panic. Although the Lan family respected the Qing, it was still too much for him to say such things about the little master of the Lan family. The more Elder Ning listened, the uglier his expression became. He did not object to the guest elders being more strict towards the little masters of the Lan family. After all, this was the intention of the old ancestor. However, this Zhu Qing insulting Lan Luofang like this was simply too arrogant. Elder Ning, you've heard everything. I'm not lying, right? Sigh, I'm a person who respects my teacher the most, so even if I'm very angry, I didn't do anything out of line. Elder Ning, you've always been the most fair. You can handle this matter as you see fit. I absolutely have no objections. Yun Shujo put away the recording stone and said respectfully. Lan Luofang pursed her lips in her heart. You're the only one who respects your teachers. You're the only one who hasn't done anything out of line. You're lying. Elder Ning glanced at Zhu Qing coldly and said, Zhu Qing, you don't have to teach classes for the time being. I'll make the arrangements after I understand the situation. Zhu Qing glared at Yun Shujo with resentment and silently retreated to the side. Elder Ning looked at Lan Luoyen and the others again. You all publicly lied and will be punished according to the 10th rule of the ancestors' rules. Each person will be given 5 lashes. Go in and receive your punishment. Lan Luoyen and the others' faces instantly turned pale. They regretted what they had done. If they had known earlier, they would not have said anything. Elder Ning finally looked at Yun Shujo. Although there is a reason for this, you clearly have a better way to deal with it, but you are still making trouble. Elder Ning was about to say the punishment for Yun Shujo when he saw Yun Shujo bow and say, Thank you, Elder Ning, for not punishing me. I know I was wrong. I will be careful with my words and actions in the future. I will not cause trouble. Elder Ning, you're quite busy with your daily affairs. I won't bother you anymore. I'll take my leave now. He Xingjiu ran away after saying that. Seeing that, Lan Luofang finally became smart and quickly ran away as well. Looking at Yun Shuji's disappearing figure, Elder Ning was so angry that his beard stood up. He wanted to get someone to catch her, but he decided to forget about it. According to this little girl's character, she would make mistakes in the future. At that time, she would be punished for several crimes. After Yun Shujo ran out for a distance, she tiptoed and saw that no guards were chasing after her. She then heaved a sigh of relief and said to Lan Luofang with a smile, Sister Luofang, do you know where the ancestral residence's big kitchen is? Chapter 47-46. Go away Batsao, she said unhappily. There will probably be a new guest giving us lessons. Why are you asking the kitchen? After all this, I'm hungry. It's not too late to eat something before going to class, He Xingjiu said as she clutched her stomach. Lan Luofang wished she could kill this guy in front of her with one slap. She had caused such a huge disaster, yet she still wanted to eat. What a good-for-nothing. I have some snacks here. You can deal with one bite. Lan Luofang took out a few pieces of pastry and handed them to He Xingjiu. Yun Shujo said while eating the pastry, all right then. Let's go back to the cultivation hall. I hope the guest elders sent here are more sensible this time. I don't want to waste my energy to beat people up again. Lan Luofang, when the two of them returned to the cultivation hall, except for Lan Luoyen and the others who were punished, the others had already returned to their seats. Seeing the two of them enter, the gazes of the crowd were somewhat complicated, especially when they looked at Yun Shujo with even more complicated gazes. Yun Shujo could not be bothered with them. She leisurely sat at the back and continued, eating snacks. Not long after, an old man with a serious expression walked in. Lan Lushan's eyes could not help but light up when she saw the old man. She was secretly delighted. This guest elder sure was the most inflexible person, and he hated people who did not follow the rules the most. Yun Shujo was going to be unlucky. As expected, when Mr. Sure saw Hei Shinjo eating a pastry, he immediately frowned and shouted coldly, "You are not allowed to eat during class." Lan Luofang, who was beside Yun Shujo, quickly snatched the pastry that Yun Shujo was eating. She was afraid that this fellow would cause trouble again. Yun Shujo took out a handkerchief to wipe her mouth and then laid lazily on the table. Mr. Sure glared at her, but did not say anything, and began his lecture. Although Mr. Sure's lecture was simple and profound, Yun Shujo knew that other than Dehua and the little purple needle, she could not conjure up anything else, so the more she listened, the more sleepy she became. Not long after, she lay on the table, and fell asleep. Lan Luofang wanted to wake her up, but she was afraid that this fellow would cause some trouble, so she could only pretend that she did not see it. While guest elder Sure was talking non-stop, he saw Hei Shinjo, who was sleeping soundly. His face immediately darkened. "Yun Shujo, come to the front. I want to see what level your spirit energy transformation skill is at." When guest elder Sure saw how carefree she was, he was immediately infuriated. He said with a slightly displeased tone, "Mr. Sure, what are you trying to do? Transform into the simplest spirit beast or spirit insect. Be careful not to transform into your intrinsic spirit beast." Yun Shujo smiled bitterly in her heart. Other than the small purple needle and Dehua, she did not know how to transform into anything else. Transform my ass. However, this fellow still released his purple spiritual power and began to conjure according to what Mr. Sure had told him. Unfortunately, he did not conjure anything. When Mr. Sure and the Lan family members saw Yun Shujo's purple spiritual power, they were all stunned. This Yun Shujo actually had a heavenly thunder spirit root? Didn't they say that the heavenly spirit root was not tolerated by the Tian Dao? How did this Yun Shujo survive until now? While everyone was stunned, they heard Yun Shujo mumbling, "Can you give me some face? Even if it turns into a Goei Batsao, it would still be worth it to me, right?" Thus, under everyone's astonished gazes, Yun Shujo's purple spiritual power turned into a purple, huge Goei Batsao. Chapter 47-47, Undying Wood. Just as everyone was in a daze, they heard Yun Shujo say excitedly, "Did you guys see that? I transformed into a Goei Batsao. Huh, really amazing. I actually transformed into a Goei Batsao. Ha ha ha." Everyone, was she an idiot? For the spiritual power transformation technique, the transformation of items and plants was the easiest. They could have completed it a long time ago. Even the most useless Lan Luofang could transform into a tree, not to mention this unremarkable Goei Batsao. They did not know that Yun Shujo had tried countless times to convert other than the small purple needle and Dehua, but she had never succeeded. This time, she was naturally very happy to be able to convert a Goei Batsao. This guy was very excited, but this guy looked at the converted Goei Batsao suspiciously. Huh? Why did this plant look so similar to Goei Ba? Although its appearance was completely different, the smug look on its face was clearly that glutton, Goei Ba. Guest elder Sure snorted coldly. "Why are you so excited about transforming into a plant? I asked you to transform into a spirit beast or a spirit insect, not a plant. Start over." Hei Xinjia's thoughts were interrupted by guest elder Sure's words, so she could only try again. Unfortunately, the transformed Goei Batsao was still the same. Everyone burst into laughter. It looked like this Yun Shujo only knew how to manifest the Goei Batsao. She was really trash. Mr. Sure's expression turned even uglier. Although your spirit root is different from an ordinary person's and your cultivation speed is faster than others, you can't be so unmotivated. If you are still unable to manifest the embryonic form of a spirit insect or spirit beast in the next lesson, you will be punished to chop down an undying tree. Everyone instantly showed a gloating expression. Yun Chujio was puzzled. What the hell was this immortal tree? After class, Yun Chujio asked Lan Luofang, "What the hell is an immortal tree?" There are many immortal trees in the garden of the ancestral residence. This kind of tree is different from ordinary spirit plants. Not only is it extremely hard, but after a sword cuts it, the cut will instantly regenerate. It takes tens of thousands of cuts to cut it down. Therefore, to successfully cut down an immortal tree, it will take at least a day and a night. Moreover, it will need to be continuously cut down. It is simply inhuman torture. Lan Luofang said with some sympathy. She felt that Yun Chujio would definitely not be able to transform into a spiritual insect or spiritual beast in the next class. She would definitely be punished. Yun Chujio nodded after hearing Lan Luofang's words, but she did not take it to heart. The biggest advantage of this guy was that he was big-hearted. Moreover, her mind was now focused on the newly transformed Goei Batsao. She was in a hurry to go back and find out what was going on. She and Lan Luofang had just walked out of the ancestral house when they saw Lan Luoyen, supported by two maids, staring at her with a ferocious expression. What does it have to do with me that you were punished for perjury? However, I'm never afraid of trouble. If you have the ability, fight me now. Come on, come and fight me. Hei Shinjo said with a smile. Yun Chujio, bitch, just you wait. Well, see. Lan Luoyen was so angry that she rolled her eyes. She had to be supported when she walked, how could she beat her? Well, see. I'm not afraid of you even if you run. You little chicken. Lan Luoyen was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She did not care that she was still injured and directly released her spiritual beast, a goshawk. Yun Chujio curled her lips and raised her hand to release Dehua. She did not expect to release a Goei Batsao. Chapter 47-48. She was going to heaven, not to mention Lan Luoyen and the others. Even the spiritual power goshawk released by Lan Luoyen was dumbfounded. What the hell is this thing? Yun Chujio was also dumbfounded. She clearly wanted to release Dehua. Why did she release this Goei Batsao? The huge purple Goei Batsao instantly attracted the attention of many people. Lan Luoshan and the others did not go far, so they also gathered around, ready to watch Yun Chujio make a fool of herself. Lan Luoyen ignored the pain in her body and laughed arrogantly. Yun Chujio, your natal spiritual beast is actually a Goei Batsao. Ha ha ha, this is hilarious. I'll give you one chance. You kneel down and admit your mistake to me right now, and I'll take back my spiritual eagle, or else you'll die a horrible death. Although Yun Chujio's heart was like a muttering dog, she had a disdainful expression on her face. What's wrong with Goei Batsao? Take care of your little chicken as usual. Lan Luoyen was instantly enraged from embarrassment. She directed her spiritual energy goshawk to attack Goei Batsao. Right at this moment, a loud shout was heard. Stop! Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw Lan Dimeo walking over with a dark expression. Why was Lan Dimeo here? Was there a need to ask? Of course, it was because he had learned that Yun Chujio had caused trouble again. He had just finished cultivating when Zhu Keqing reported with a conflicted expression, Third Elder, the young miss beat up Zhu Keqing. Lan Dimeo felt his head buzzing. Ever since Yun Chujio came to the Lan family, there was not a day that she did not cause trouble. Moreover, the trouble she caused was getting bigger and bigger. She actually dared to beat up a guest. She was going to heaven. However, he could not help but be stunned when he heard the end of the report. That troublemaker actually did not get punished for beating up Zhu Keqing. When he heard what Zhu Keqing said, his expression immediately darkened. He felt that Yun Shujiu beat him up well. No matter what, Lan Luoyan was still the daughter of the third branch. How could a mere guest like him say such outrageous things? If he didn't beat her up, would he still be alive? Even so, he still felt that it was necessary to beat Yun Shujiu up to prevent her from causing trouble again. After waiting for a long time, Yun Shujiu still did not return. Only then did he bring Zhu Yang to the ancestral residence. No matter how much he disliked Yun Shujiu, he would not watch helplessly as Yun Shujiu was bullied by the people of the main branch. That was why he spoke out to stop her. When Lan Luoyan saw Lan Dimeo, she had no choice but to reluctantly put away the spirit beast. On the heavy cloud continent, the master could freely put away the spirit beast. This was also the reason why the spirit power illusion technique on the heavy cloud continent was superior to that on the immortal origin continent. After Lan Luoyan bowed to Lan Dimeo, she directly left without complaining. Because the big house and the third house were in a competitive relationship, it was useless to talk about it. After returning to the third house, Yun Shujiu was called to the study room by Lan Dimeo. "Great uncle, thank you for helping me out. I know that great uncle dotes on me the most," He Xinjiu said with a smile. Lan Dimeo glanced at her, then, he said, "You'd better restrain yourself a little so that you won't regret it later. Great uncle has taught me that I will be obedient in the future and never cause trouble," Yun Shujiu said obediently. Lan Dimeo snorted coldly. Apparently, he didn't quite believe what she said, but he didn't know what to say. He could only wave his hand impatiently and chase her out of the study. Chapter 47-49. Jia Shi Yun Shujiu walked out of Lan Dimeo's courtyard. When she saw Lan Luofang's maid, Zi Hua, looking from afar, she knew that she was waiting for her. As expected, when she saw Yun Shujiu coming out, Zi Hua quickly ran over. "Miss, my lady invites you over." Yun Shujiu nodded. "Yesterday's sweet and sour pork ribs were not bad. Remember to go to the big kitchen and get more." Zi Hua, what did she mean? Was this person planning to freeload again? Was she addicted to freeloading? However, she did not dare to have any objections. This ancestor even dared to slaughter Zheng Mama and even beat up Zhu Keqing. Unless she was tired of living, she would only provoke her. Zi Hua looked at Hong Ling sympathetically. "It must be difficult to live with such a murderous devil, right?" Hong Ling looked at Zi Hua's eyes with a complicated expression. Was it hard to live? It seemed not bad. At least when she slapped Xiang Yuan with her own hands, she felt better than ever. When Yun Shujiu arrived at Lan Luofang's courtyard, Lan Luofang snorted coldly. "Don't think that I'll treat you differently just because you stood up for me today. Consider it as I owe you a favor. I'll return it to you in the future." "Oh." Lan Luofang looked suspiciously at He Xinjiu, who was eating her own fruit. What did she mean by "oh"? She had thought that Yun Shujiu would return the favor and not let it go. It was just an "oh" and it was over. Yun Shujiu took 2 bites of the fruit and said to Zi Hua, "Zi Hua, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and get someone to get the food. Are you trying to starve me and your miss to death? Remember my sweet and sour pork ribs." Zi Hua's eyes twitched as she looked at Lan Luofang. Lan Luofang glared at Yun Shujiu. "Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat all day long. If you can't summon a spirit beast to assist you in the next spiritual class, you'll be punished." Yun Shujiu glanced at her. "You speak as if you can successfully summon a spirit beast. It's the same. Let's not laugh at each other anymore." Lan Luofang was so angry that she was twitching. She remembered that she had never been able to successfully transform into a spiritual beast. She was a little depressed and could not be bothered to ridicule Yun Shujiu anymore. After the food was served, Lan Luofang was not in the mood to eat. Yun Shujo, on the other hand, was eating happily. While eating, she said, "What's there to be worried about? Anyway, I'm the one who's at the bottom. What are you afraid of?" Lan Luofeng thought about it and agreed. In the past, she had always been the last in her spiritual power class. Now, no matter what, she had become the second last, which was an improvement. She saw that more than half of the dishes on the table had been eaten by Yun Shujo, so she quickly picked up her chopsticks and started eating. While the two of them were enjoying their meal, a maid's voice came from the door. "The second madam has arrived." Before Lan Luofeng and Yun Shujo could react, the second madam, Jia Shi, had already rushed in. "Feng quickly let mother take a look. Are you hurt anywhere?" Jia Shi pulled Lan Luofeng up and down to check. The day before yesterday, Jia Shi returned to her mother's house. Although she heard that Lan Luofeng was fine in the end, she still rushed back. "Mother, I'm fine." Lan Luofeng saw Yun Shujia's teasing gaze and could not help but feel a little uncomfortable. Jia Shi saw that Lan Luofeng was really fine and poked Lan Luofeng's forehead with her finger. "Are you stupid? How did I give birth to such a stupid girl like you? Aren't you often bullied by others? Why didn't you tell me?" Chapter 4750 Having a mother's child is like a piece of treasure. Jia Shi was obviously really angry, causing Lan Luofeng to step back repeatedly. Lan Luofeng felt wronged and her eyes instantly turned red. "Mother, the people of the ancestral residence are not to be trifled with. I'm afraid that you will be at a disadvantage." Jia Shi's anger instantly turned into heartache. She hugged Lan Luofeng's heart and cried non-stop. Yun Shujo watched from the side. Her heart was sour. Having a mother's child was still better. Sure enough, a mother's child was like a piece of treasure, while a child without a mother was like a blade of grass. No matter how stupid Lan Luofeng was, at least she still had Jia Shi to protect her. However, her mother was trapped in the Zen sect and had never even met her. Therefore, this fellow turned his grief and anger into appetite and began to gnaw on the fruit viciously. Only then did Jia Shi notice Yun Shujo and said with a smile, "Little girl Jo, it's all thanks to you this time. What do you want? Second aunt will agree to it." Yun Shujo did not think that the smiling Jia Shi was a kind person. She did not forget that the maid she killed previously was one of Jia Shi's people. She smiled and said, "Second aunt, you are too polite. Sister Luofeng is my biological cousin. I naturally want to help her. There's no need to thank her." Jia Shi's eyes flashed. She smiled and said, "You little girl, you really know how to talk. I brought back a lot of delicious and fun things from my mother's house. I'll get someone to send them to you later." "Thank you, second aunt. It's getting late, I'll go back now." Yun Shujo threw the fruit core into the plate and tactfully said goodbye. Jia Shi saw that Yun Shujo had left with Hong Ling, so she asked Lan Luofeng, "Tell me what happened in the past 2 days." Lan Luofeng immediately told her everything that had happened in the past 2 days, and then she said with some awkwardness, "Mother, that Yun Shujo did frame me yesterday, but if it wasn't for her help today, I would have been punished, so. Jia Shi had a look of disappointment. "You want me to stop finding trouble with her, don't you? How did I give birth to such a soft-hearted girl like you? Sigh, it's fine if your father and I are still alive, but if we go, what will you do?" Lan Luofeng immediately hugged Jia Shi's waist and said, "Mother, don't talk nonsense. You and father will definitely be able to accompany Feng Er." Jia Shi sighed. Birth, old age, illness, and death are inevitable. With your character, unless you can find a husband who will protect you, otherwise, sigh. When Lan Luofeng heard Jia Shi mention the marriage, her face immediately turned red. "Mother, what are you talking about? I'm still young. Besides, I don't want to get married." I want to always accompany you and father. I don't care. I don't want to get married anyway. Besides, Yun Shujo came from the low-level continents. Didn't she not get married? At the mention of Yun Shujo, Jia Shi snorted coldly. That little girl is obviously full of bad ideas. Be more careful in the future. Don't let her sell you and help her count the money. Lan Luofeng acknowledged, but in her heart, she felt that following that wicked and smoking Yun Shujo was actually not bad. At least in the past, when she was reprimanded by Zhu Keqing, no one would stand up for her. Jia Shi naturally saw through Lan Luofeng's thoughts and frowned without saying anything. Since Feng Er felt that Yun Shujo was not bad, then she would take another look. To be honest, if Feng Er had as many ideas as that little girl, then she would not be so worried. Chapter 4751 was indeed Go Weiba on the other side. The wicked and smoking He Xinzhou strolled back to her own courtyard. This fellow had always been thinking about De Hua. Even though when he first summoned De Hua, this fellow was very resistant to the fact that his spiritual beast was a pig. But after such a long time, he had at least developed feelings for De Hua. He couldn't just disappear like that, could he? Besides, De Hua was also pretty awesome. It was better than a single Guai Chao, right? Speaking of Guai Chao, He Xinzhou immediately looked at the strange grass in her dantian. When the Guai Chao noticed her spiritual sense, it immediately began to act cute with a sly look on its face. Yun Shujo frowned and asked with her spiritual sense, "Does that Guai Chao have anything to do with you?" The leaves of the Guai Chao immediately began to sway proudly. It was extremely proud. When Yun Shujo saw this situation, she was so angry that she gritted her teeth. As she said, that Goei Batsao was very similar to the Guai Chao. So it was really related to it. Could it be that De Hua's disappearance was also caused by this fellow? Yun Shujo gritted her teeth and asked, "Where's De Hua? Was he harmed by you?" Guai Chao looked wronged. Although it could not speak, its emotions were clearly expressed and had nothing to do with it. Yun Shujo narrowed her eyes and released her spiritual beast again, wanting to release De Hua. However, every time she released De Hua, it was the purple Go Wei Batsao. Especially when the flower tassel that looked like Go Wei Ba tail was still wagging proudly, He Xinzhou was so angry that she kept twitching. Yun Shujo really could not understand why things had turned out like this. She recalled that back in the ghost realm, she muttered a sentence about a big brick, and in the end, she summoned a big brick. Could it be that this time, it was also because of her muttering? Just as Yun Shujo was puzzled, but Fei said, "Little fairy, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. Maybe De Hua has gone into hibernation, and when it wakes up, it will become even more powerful." Although Yun Shujo was skeptical, she couldn't think of a reason. She could only temporarily put the matter of De Hua to the back of her mind. Then, there was the problem. No matter what, De Hua was still very powerful after she turned into a black form. Now that she had turned into a Goei Batsao, could it be that she was going to use the Goei Batsao to fight against the spiritual beasts in the next battle? Just thinking about that scene made her feel sour. If it were vines or poisonous plants, it would be all right. What could a Goei Batsao do? The more He Xinzhou thought about it, the more sour she felt. This damned Goei Batsao. What sin had she committed in her previous life that caused her to be entangled by this damned Goei Batsao in this life? This fellow thought of the mission that Mr. Shi had given her and tried it again and again. Unfortunately, other than the purple needles and Goei Batsao, nothing else materialized. In the end, she gave up. At worst, she could just chop the undying wood. Another day passed, and it was time for class again. Fortunately, this class was a body refining class and not Mr. Shi's spiritual power class. He Xinzhou could be considered to have let out a sigh of relief for the time being. The location of the class was not in the cultivation hall, but in a small square. In the heavy cloud continent, not only did they pay attention to a cultivator's spiritual power cultivation, but they also paid attention to the toughness of the body. Furthermore, there was a special body refining method. Yun Shujo listened to the contents of guest Jis' lecture and thought to herself, this heavy cloud continent was indeed worthy of being a high-level continent. Their knowledge was indeed better than those low-level continents. Chapter 4752, Skipping Rope. Hei Shinjo. After guest Ji finished his explanation, he opened a barrier and allowed everyone to train inside. Yun Shujo did not know what was going on inside, so she followed Lan Luofang and the others into the barrier curiously. After entering the barrier, Yun Shujo realized that there were many stone caves inside. There were plaques hanging on them, such as the Ice Room, the Fire Room, the Thorn Room. Lan Luofang saw Yun Shuji's blank expression and explained, choose 3 rooms randomly and stay in each room for 15 minutes. Then you can leave. Yun Shujo nodded. This was probably a good way to train the Bodhi's endurance. The reason why everyone chose 3 rooms was because of their spiritual roots. For example, fire spiritual roots were naturally more resistant to heat. If they chose only 1 fire room, it would be meaningless. Lan Luofang had a water spiritual root and was most afraid of fire. However, she entered the fire room first. Yun Shuji's eyes flashed with a faint light. This little fool still had some merits. As this fellow thought, he followed her into the fire room. The fire room was boiling with heat. The moment one entered, one would feel as if they were being burnt. Hei Shinjo had the fire-repelling pearl on her, but this fellow did not activate the fire-repelling pearl in order to train his body. Even so, the fire-repelling beads could not kill her even if she was struck by lightning, so the heat was not a problem. Therefore, the people in the fire room were stunned to see that there was not even a drop of sweat on Hei Xinjia's face. She even took out a rope and began to jump. As she jumped, she said, "It's too cold. I have to exercise, or I will be frozen stiff." Everyone was so angry that their noses were almost crooked. However, when they thought about the fact that this guy had a heavenly thunder spirit root, they understood that this guy was deliberately provoking them. Compared to Yun Shuji's show-off, Lan Luofang was not as relaxed. Her face was roasted until it was red, and her forehead was full of bean-sized beads of sweat. She felt as if her internal organs were being burned. Even so, she still bit her lips and persevered. Finally, after a quarter of an hour that felt like a lifetime, Lan Luofang staggered out of the fire room. Yun Shujo followed behind her and said faintly, "Since you're so impatient with the heat, why did you have to choose the fire room?" Lan Luofang didn't say anything, but turned around and entered the ice room next to her. As soon as this guy entered, he shivered. The temperature of the ice room was frighteningly low. What dripping water into ice was simply too weak. In this ice room, even if he circulated his spiritual power, his teeth would tremble from the cold. Although there was a small flame in his right palm, he knew that he had to become stronger, so he did not rely on the small flame. Instead, he continued to jump rope in the room. Everyone in the room looked speechlessly at Hei Shinjo, who was jumping around like a rabbit. Every time they entered, they would obediently endure the cold. There was actually such an operation? Even though Yun Shujo kept jumping rope, she still felt a bone-piercing chill. She inexplicably thought of debeaming. She did not know what kind of trouble he had encountered. Just as Yun Shujo was thinking, Lan Luofang said with a trembling voice, "Let's go, it's 15 minutes." Yun Shujo followed Lan Luofang out of the ice room and entered the deep sea room next to it. Most of the people in the Lan family had water spiritual roots, so there were many people in the deep sea room. The content of the deep sea room was very simple. It was to survive for 15 minutes under the turbulent sea without the help of external forces. Chapter 4753 wanted to trick her? Although this deep-sea chamber was difficult for water-type spiritual roots, it was still barely achievable. However, it was too difficult for other spiritual roots. Therefore, everyone looked at Yun Shujiu as if they were watching a good show. Only then did Lan Luofeng realize that Yun Shujiu did not have water-type spiritual roots. She used her eyes to signal for her to leave quickly so that she would not be in danger. Yun Shujiu waved her hand indifferently. She had a water-repellent bead. What was there to be afraid of? However, this fellow did not activate the water-repellent bead at the beginning. He wanted to see how long he could withstand it. Very soon, this fellow's face turned red and his eyes were about to pop out. Lan Luofeng was about to forcefully push her out, but she realized that this fellow had suddenly returned to normal. She was puzzled. Could it be that she had a water-repellent bead or water-repellent bead on her? Although water-repellent pearls were rare, the Lan family still had a few of them. However, they were rare and even Lan Luofeng did not have them. Therefore, Lan Luofeng and the others all felt that Yun Shujiu had activated the water-repellent pearls. 15 minutes later, everyone left the deep-sea room. Lan Luofeng said with some exhaustion, "You borrowed external force just now, so this deep-sea room doesn't count. You can only choose another room. You can't stay here for long. I'll go out first." Yun Shujiu also knew that she had cheated just now, so she glanced around and finally chose a wind blade room. At this time, the members of the Lan family had basically completed their mission and left one after another. Only Yun Shujiu was left here. As soon as Yun Shujiu entered the wind blade room, several wind blades swept toward her. This guy originally wanted to use spiritual power to hit her, but he remembered the rules here and had to dodge. At first, it was still relatively easy, but as more and more wind blades appeared, it was obviously impossible to dodge just by relying on his movement technique. Yun Shujiu could not help but squint her eyes. Could it be that she had been tricked? As she used her spiritual power to hit the wind blades, she moved towards the exit. However, after she pressed the mechanism on the wall, the stone door did not open. Hei Xingjiu curled the corner of her mouth. She had really been tricked. She just did not know who had tampered with her and wanted to kill her just like that. She was too naive. After retreating for a distance, this fellow took out a pile of talismans and threw them at the stone door. Although these talismans could only be considered low to medium grade in the heavy cloud continent, they could not withstand the large number of them. After the huge explosion, not to mention the stone door, even the entire wind blade room started to tremble. There were even broken stones falling from the ceiling of the cave. The Lan family members outside only felt the earth tremble. Everyone was shocked. What was going on? Could it be that the earth dragon had turned over? At this moment, Lan Luofeng's expression changed. Guest Ji, Yun Shujiu is still below. Guest Ji was stunned. He glanced around and indeed did not find any trace of Yun Shujiu. However, the situation down there was still unclear, so he naturally would not rashly go down. At this moment, housekeeper Su rushed over with many guards. Guest Ji, what happened? Guest Ji quickly said, there should be something wrong with the body refining room down there. Yun Shujiu is still down there. It's just that the situation is still unclear, so it's not good to rashly go down and check. Housekeeper Zu's face stiffened when he heard that. Yun Shujiu again? But he couldn't ignore it. Just as he was about to ask the guards to go down and save her, he saw Yun Shujiu slowly walk out. As she walked, she patted the dust off her body. Chapter 4754 Deposit, TSK. Isn't this wind blade room a little too weak? Why is it collapsing for no reason? Fortunately, I'm smart. Otherwise, I would have been buried inside. Hei Xingjiu said with a look of lingering fear. Guest Ji frowned. You said that the wind blade room collapsed. I don't know if it will collapse in the end. Anyway, there are stones falling from the roof. It really scared me to death. Hei Shinjo looked like she was scared to death. Guest G frowned even more. He had gone down to check yesterday and did not find anything unusual. Why would it suddenly collapse? He tilted his ears to listen. He felt that there should be no danger, so he brought a few guards down. Seeing the situation in front of him, Guest G almost vomited blood. This was not a collapse. It was clearly someone who blew up the stone door. As for the culprit, there was no need to guess at all. It must be that Yunchujo. Guest G angrily returned to the top and said to Hei Shinjo, who was chewing on the spirit fruit to calm herself down, angrily, Yunchujo, did you blow up the stone door of the wind blade room? Everyone immediately burst into a clamor. What? So it was this Yunchujo who had blown up the door of the wind blade room that caused such a huge commotion? She was courting death. She actually dared to blow up the wind blade room. Was she tired of living? Housekeeper Su was even more dumbfounded. He had finally realized that once Yunchujo came to the ancestral residence, she would definitely cause trouble. Moreover, each time she came, it would become more serious. Was she going against the ancestral residence? Yunchujo calmly threw the fruit core that she had finished chewing to Lan Luofang and said, I don't want to blow up the door either. Those talismans are very expensive. But someone has done something to it. I can't open the stone door and come out. I can't just wait for death inside, right? If you don't believe me, you can check if someone has done something to it. Today, I'll put my words here. No matter who wants to trick me, don't let me find out. Otherwise, I'll definitely let them know how to write the word regret. Yunchujo did not ask housekeeper Su or guest G to help her make a decision, because it was useless even if she said it. The Lan family did not prohibit this kind of scheming, and even encouraged it. It could only be said that whoever fell for it was unlucky. Unless someone really died, no one would care. Housekeeper Su saw that Yunchujo was eager to give it a try, and the corner of his mouth twitched. This Miss Cousin really had the blood of the Lan family flowing in her. For this kind of scheming, it was really pleasant to see. Guest J's attitude towards Yunchujo finally eased up a little. Housekeeper Su coughed twice and said, Young lady, even if there's a reason for this, you can't just let it go just because you damaged the wind blade room. Are you going to compensate with money or go to the Hall of Punishment to receive your punishment? Yunchujo curled her lips. In my place, anything that can be solved with money is not a problem. Just name a number. But, if it's too expensive, can you pay in installments? Housekeeper Su looked at her speechlessly and then said, We won't know how many spirit stones it will cost until it's repaired, but it will at least cost 2 million high-grade spirit stones. Yunchujo nodded. In that case, I will pay a part of the deposit first. After the repair is done, I will hand over the remaining money. Housekeeper Su nodded, feeling that Yunchujo's attitude was not bad. However, when he saw that Yunchujo only threw him one upper-grade spirit stone, his nose almost went crooked from anger. One spirit stone could be called a part of the deposit? Was she joking with him? He wanted to say something, but when he saw Yunchujo's faint smile, he immediately backed down. He would talk about it after the repairs were done, or else, if she were to come up with something bad again, he would not be able to stand it. Chapter 4755. A fruit core. Housekeeper Su weighed the pros and cons, and finally said with a stiff face, Miss Cousin, that's all for now. When the wind blade room is finished, this old servant will ask you for the remaining penalty. Yunchujo nodded. No problem. I am a person of the utmost integrity, and I have always treated money like dirt. I will definitely not go back on my word. For some reason, housekeeper Su had a bad feeling. There was an 80% chance that he wouldn't be able to get the money. Housekeeper Sue gave a wry smile and looked at Guest G. Guest G, please continue with your lesson. Leave the matters of the wind blade room to me. Guest G nodded. He was clearly not too surprised that someone had tampered with the wind blade room. Similar things happened all the time in the Lan family. It was just a matter of who had the better methods. Guest G brought everyone back to the training hall and helped them answer some of the questions they had about body tempering before he dismissed the class. Lan Luofeng slapped a fruit core on Yin Shujia's table. Yin Shujio, why did you throw the fruit core to me just now? Yin Shujio blinked her eyes. If she said that it was just a casual throw, would she get beaten up? Sister Luofeng, I want to tell you that you are like this fruit core now. Although it looks dull, you can take root and sprout with time. So don't lose your confidence. I have high hopes for you. Lan Luofeng didn't know that this guy was just making things up. She was stunned and looked at the fruit core on the table in a daze. Seeing her like this, Yun Shujio felt a rare pain in her conscience. She coughed and said, Sister Luofeng, it's the middle of the afternoon. Let's go to the ancestral residence's big kitchen for a walk. Lan Luofeng put the fruit core into her storage ring and said, the dishes made in the ancestral residence's big kitchen are not very delicious. We might as well go back to the third room to eat. Yun Shujio blinked her eyes and said, it doesn't make sense. Shouldn't the food given to the ancestor be delicious? Lan Luofeng looked at her as if she was looking at an idiot and said, the ancestor doesn't care about the desire of the mouth and stomach. He even often abstains from eating. Moreover, even if he wants to eat something, the ancestor has a small kitchen. How could he eat the food from the big kitchen? Yin Shijia's eyes lit up. Then the food in the small kitchen must be very delicious? Of course, but the small kitchen is not open to us. We can only taste the cooking skills of the small kitchen during some festivals or when we offer sacrifices to our ancestors every year, Lan Luofeng said. Hei Xingjiu swallowed her saliva. She wanted to go to the ancestors' place for a free meal, but she was afraid of stirring up a hornet's nest, so she could only follow Lan Luofeng back to the third room sullenly. When Lan Dimeo heard that Yun Shujio had blown up the stone door of the wind blade room, he was so shocked that he almost sat on the ground. He had said that this troublemaker would not stop. As expected, the more trouble she caused, the bigger it got. He did not know what kind of trouble she would cause next. Yun Shujio was also very curious. However, she did not have any manpower or evidence, so she could only put this matter aside for the time being. However, she became even more vigilant in her heart. Another day had passed, and the spiritual energy lesson that gave Yun Shujio a headache had arrived. As soon as guest Elder Shi entered the cultivation hall, he said to Hei Xingjiu, who was dressed in a quail outfit, Mr. Shi, come forward. Yun Shujio, come forward. I want to see the results of your training over the past few days. Chapter 4756, Purple-masked man. Yun Shujio braced herself and walked to the front, gesturing for a long time. Unfortunately, every time she released the Gowei Batsao, it was always showing off. Guest Elder Shi snorted coldly. I've already heard from others that this Gowei Batsao is your natal spirit beast. In that case, you don't know how to transform into a supplementary spirit beast at all, do you? Yun Shujio laughed dryly. I think so. Mr. Shi was so angry. What did he mean by, I think so? Since you haven't completed your mission, then go and cut down an undying tree after class. Otherwise, don't attend the next spirit power class. Mr. Shi said in a deep voice. Mr. Shi, everything has to be done step by step. My spirit power is already much lower than everyone else, and I've just attended another class. Aren't you asking too much of me? Hei Xingjiu said in a wronged tone. Mr. Shi was taken aback. It made sense when he thought about it. This Yunchujo was from a lower-tier continent, and she was only at the 6th level of the Nirvana stage. She had only attended one class, so it was indeed a bit harsh for her to immediately transform into a supporting spirit beast. What you said does make sense. Then I'll give you a few more days. If you still can't transform into a supporting spirit beast in 10 days, you won't have anything to say, right? Mr. Sure, you're really too reasonable. It's my honor to meet a teacher like you. Don't worry, I'll definitely study hard and practice hard when I go back. Although Hei Xinjia's words were beautiful, she was cursing in her heart. Forget 10 days, even 10 years would be useless. She could just drag it out one day at a time. Seeing her sincere attitude, Mr. Sure waved his hand and let her return to her seat. Everyone watched as Yunchujo hopped back to her seat, and their hearts felt as though they had lost their minds. Didn't they say that Mr. Sure was the most inflexible? Why was she not punished after a few words from Yunchujo? However, everyone thought about it. Based on Yunchujo's level of trash, she might not even succeed in 10 months, let alone 10 days. She would be punished sooner or later. Mr. Sure did not continue with his questions and began his lecture. Lan Luofeng, who was on tenterhooks, finally heaved a sigh of relief. Up until now, she had only been able to transform into a fish head. If she was questioned, she would definitely be punished. At the same time, the atmosphere in the Lan family's ancestors' study was somewhat tense. A man wearing a purple mask said in a slightly displeased voice, "Lan family head, are you not planning to hand Yunchujo over to our divine demon hall?" The patriarch of the Lan family smiled. Today is different from the past. Since Yunchujo is a junior of our Lan family, as the patriarch of the Lan family, I naturally can't hand her over to you. The face of the Lan family's patriarch darkened slightly. I treat you as a guest and treat you with courtesy. If you are so presumptuous, then please go back. The purple-masked man gritted his teeth and softened his tone. Master of the Lan family, I was too impatient, so my tone was not good. You also know the importance of Yunchujo to our divine devil hall. If you can hand over Yunchujo, we are willing to help your Lan family eliminate the dissidents and make you the #1 aristocratic family that can contend with the Zen sect. Seeing that the purple-masked man lowered his body, the Lan family's ancestors' tone also became more polite. This is an important matter. Let me think about it and I will reply to you in a few days. How about it? Although the purple-masked man was not satisfied, he did not say anything and turned around to leave. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.